And I cleaned up my computer too before I got on here. So.
Oh, really? Well, that's good. It's good to know.
It means I can't save any of our videos anymore, unfortunately. But.
Oh, really?
Yeah, once they're on YouTube, I get rid of them. So.
Oh, they're on YouTube though. As long as YouTube doesn't crash, right?
Oh, for fuck's sakes! This is. This thing. I have to take us back in again.
Oh, it's okay. Oh, yeah.
It's still saying it's on the live stream. What the fuck?
I did clear on my phone this morning. I was getting kind of low disk issues on my phone. Like I had some pictures. It puts a little thing on the corner, that little circle, so you can't text them or email them or anything.
Yeah.
I was going back. I was going to go back with Bill this morning about some stuff, and I was trying to send him a picture and wouldn't go, and I had to clear a whole bunch of freaking messages out of fucking pain in the ass.
I had to screen cap a picture I sent you yesterday.
Oh, I do it all the time.
That was on my phone because it just wouldn't, like, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Page you manage. No, it was a great episode. Like, I thought we had a really good discussion.
Yeah, it was good. It was fun. It was definitely fun.
I learned a lot, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's a fun, definitely a fun episode, you know.
Well, it's such a touchy area too. Like if you start saying that there was like, you know, we emphasized that it was about slavery, but the other thing that I like is that we talked about, you know, that there was other reasons why, and there was all these culture, like, you know, there's all these cultural differences and everything else. And
well, I think it was important to do that because you're talking about, you're talking about specifically a lot of people feel some people think that nothing to do with slavery and they always fall back on this other stuff. So you got to talk about it, you know.
Well, yeah, because it's legit. They're legit reasons too. I mean, there's a reason why the North was ahead from an industrial standpoint, you know, because
first I hit my cord today already. Pretty solid.
What the fuck is going on with this? Oh, I have to add a description. Really?
It just doesn't go straight to live. It just kind of.
No, I had to add a fucking description this time. Fucking Zuckerberg.
Be careful, you got banned like Andrea. I can't believe she got banned again. Yeah. Actually, I can believe she got banned again, actually. It's too bad she's not going to be on, but it's so funny. And she's like a habitual offender type thing. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things.
She is going to be on because she just messaged me. She's asking where we are.
Oh, okay, very good, very good. But it's pretty funny though. I made that picture of her. God, it must be a year or so ago now.
No, you
with
showed
the
me
band thing. She'd created a whole fake Facebook profile to be used. So when she got banned, Anyway, hey Leonard, good morning. Oh, hi everybody, stepping in. Just realized we were on.
Trying to find our feed.
Yeah.
Like Facebook on the iPad.
So when she got oh, really?
There.
Yeah. Anyway.
Wow, 10 people already.
Wow, look at that, huh? Haven't even stretched yet. Good morning, everybody. Jacob, Bennett, Ryan Diamond from across the pond.
Yeah, hi, Andrea. Hey, Andrea, by the way.
Friggin' Andrea. Anyway, I commented. Bennett, of course, that's who it is. Yeah. Hi, Bennett. I commandeered Ben's account.
Hey, Barbara. Hi, Allie B. Hey, Ryan.
Yeah.
Hey, Ryan. I hope my retweet got you some book suggestions for those staff officers this morning.
Yeah. Well, hey, Mark. What's up, man? Bennett equals Andrea. Yeah, old Andrea got herself banned off Facebook again. She got herself Zuckerberged again. What a freaking surprise.
Good morning, Barbara.
Oh, good morning. Good morning, buddy. Oh, I gotta wake up a little bit. We're gonna be getting some snow here tomorrow.
Andrea, nice sweatshirt. Where'd you get it?
Yeah, some Kentuckian must have got it.
Andrea.
So hey, anyway, so you waking up, Finch, or what? You ready to go?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right.
Fine.
Yeah. Make it sure. So how are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Okay. Good.
Great episode.
It was definitely a fun episode. Definitely to jump on. Yeah, a couple minutes late today. We had some Sign Facebook issues, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, apparently I have to put a description. What did Andrea do this time? LOL.
I don't know. What does she not do? What did she not do? I almost unleashed my Andrea meme I made a year plus ago for her. So
you made one of me one time too when I was saying in that chat we have with her about how my goal was to get banned off some
I did.
some serious Facebook, some serious civil war. Yes, good afternoon, Ryan. Yeah, he had some responses. He was looking for books about staff officers. Hey, Jim. Good morning.
Oh, what's up, Jim? What's up, Senor Apostle White?
Hey, John.
Anyway, yeah. So how was your week? How did everything go for you
Had
up
a
there?
snow day yesterday.
I heard you had a snow day yesterday. Another stay-at-home situation for you, huh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I started out to work and there was like it had snowed all night, and I have to take this like 2-lane highway to work, and it's middle of the country. There's lots of like open farmland and stuff like that, and the wind was really up, and along this particular stretch of road it can get, if there's like wind and snow, then there's complete whiteout. So I went through one whiteout and I'm like, I'll be okay. And then I went through another one, which is 30 seconds of me playing the game of which side of the road am I on, and am I going to get in the ditch? And I realized my entire drive was going to be like that. So
It's a fun game, by the way.
I was like, nope. So I turned around, and then I attempted again a little while later, and I was like, I'm not going to do this. So another snow day.
Yeah. Well, it's always fun driving around. When you get behind a truck with his lights on and you just follow those lights, and if he goes off a cliff, that's where I'm going in the snow. But yeah, sorry to hear about your shit, Andrea, that you're going through.
Yeah,
my God, that's
sorry,
awful.
Andrea. I really hope everything's going okay with that. Hey, Jay Price.
Holy Christ! What
Hi,
man through
Jay
introductions?
Price.
Jen Price is on.
Yeah.
She must have lost her running shoes.
Leonard said, "Great episode this week, guys." Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thanks,
And
Leonard.
yes, I might find out what it's like to do that from a cell, being the confession I made on that.
Yeah, she admitted to I don't know if it's a felony or what.
I don't know. It's underage fucking drinking.
Sneaking your Labatt's Blue behind the swing set back at Goddard's Middle School.
Those were the days drinking on my friend's farm. And there was one night that she got, like, two of my friends got really, really loaded, but I was not. So then my friend lived on a dairy farm. So there was all these cows out in the field that night. So I threatened to go cow tipping, and she actually thought I was going to do it.
Oh, I think everyone's first time drinking's in the woods somewhere. I know mine was.
Mine was on a farm.
No.
And then I started walking through a cornfield because I convinced my friend there was aliens in there.
There probably was. Scarecrows, aliens, clowns, all kinds
Rosewoods
of stuff.
clown.
Anyway,
well, and then then I cracked some joke about the battle. Like, it wasn't a joke, but I started talking about the Battle of Antietam when I got really drunk one night in the cornfield.
Oh.
So I started calling her cornfield the bloody cornfield.
What else? 6 Wisconsin. Speaking of Black Iron Mercy.
Yeah, which is a very good book. And Jim said the bad thing from home is there are no such thing as snow days. That's very true. A lot of my office works from home, but my job is such that I can't. And I was just like, I'm not making it in yesterday.
Yeah, that's okay. Those blizzards aren't going to pour themselves. So
Jay Price, we're so happy you were able to stop by.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. She stopped by.
Yeah, no, it's been a while.
Yeah, it definitely was. Yeah, almost.
It's gonna go later when the temperature's in double digits.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna get a lot of bad weather here today. Gonna snow all day tomorrow to watch Tom Brady get his ass kicked, and I'll watch what's the snow falling tomorrow. I'm still bitter about that.
Jacob said his first time drinking was on a farm too.
Oh, North Carolina! What a surprise! What a shocker! If you said if it was in a bar in downtown city out there, oh really? That'd have been kind of a surprise. Anyway, so the episode, I guess we could talk about that so we go off the rails. But I thought that was a good one. I mean, I know we've been talking about doing secession for a while, and it's fun because, like we were saying a little while ago, while you were swearing, trying to get the Facebook to go, it was like people focus on the election of 1860, and they just focus on that of the Lincoln part of the secession. They don't realize how far back it actually went. Now we didn't want to go as far back in the friggin' Jurassic era, going back to the Constitution and with John Adams and about all the Thomas Jefferson, all T-Rex. So, going with the Raptors. The movie, according to the Raptors from the movies, you know.
The Raptors would have won.
But you know what though? You know what though? I've read stuff that they say the Raptors in those movies aren't the real ones. They're in real life they're much smaller. They're like glorified chickens. So I don't know.
Well, there was different. Okay, you're finding out I'm a dinosaur geek now. There was different types and species of raptors, but the T-Rex was a scavenger because its arms were like this and it couldn't do anything.
Well, they couldn't type too. They had to use that talk to text. You know, but going back to, you know, the history part of it, we kind of started with like the 1820s, going back to the Tariff Act.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting to, and we can't, you know, we can't talk about everything. I mean, there's a million friggin' aspects of this whole secession thing, but you know, you take it back to the Tariff Act, and you talk about, you know, how John Quincy Adams wanted to build those canals, and it was one of those situations where, you know, it's similar to a lot of stuff that's been happening in the media here the last couple of years about these tariffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, you know, they're putting a 50% tax on things from England and France. And, and this was to obviously spur more people buying American, right?
Yeah.
But what it really did is it really stuck it to the South, who was buying stuff from over there. It made the cost really expensive. And that pissed them off too. And that was a big part of it. It's funny how it kind of always goes back to economics.
Yeah, the South had a different economy, but it was a slave-based economy. And that's the one thing I do have a member of my family that keeps telling me it was about the economy. And I said, yes, but it's slave-based. I mean, that's it. It goes back to having a slave-based economy.
And the one thing, you know, we wanted to do too is look, I think everybody, any reasonable thinking person knows the Civil War was about slavery. It says in the it says in the secession documents. But we did want to talk about the economic part of it too, because you do hear about it. You do hear about a lot of the stuff. You hear about the 1828 Tariff Act a lot. You hear about it a lot of the lost cause stuff. If you venture over to the Confederate Facebook pages like I do, Mary, and just don't post,
I do that too. Bad,
you hear a lot about that act. You hear a lot about Jacob's friend John C. Calhoun, right? That he mentioned. And he really, you know, you talk about these like important people in history that kind of spurred the secession thing. I mean, you could talk about John Quincy Adams. You could talk about John C. Calhoun was a big one because he's the one, like we said on the podcast, who put the first idea in these people's heads that if you don't like a law that the Fed's putting on you, you're as a state, you don't got to follow it, and you can leave. It's like that scene in Gettysburg of the Gentleman's Club, you know, that whole thing with Pickett, and that happened back in the 1820s. I think Calhoun died around 1850, so he didn't see all the stuff come down.
Yeah, he was when he introduced that one bill, that one compromise of 1850 that led to the Nashville Convention. When he introduced it, he had tuberculosis. So then he ended up having to leave. And it was actually Stephen Douglas that took it over for him. But he kept in a lot of what Calhoun had wanted in it.
Right.
And like we said on the podcast, Calhoun is known as the Great Compromiser. So no, he did not. I think maybe he died in 1852.
It was right around 1850, 1850 or somewhere around there. I know he died well before John Brown, and so it must have been early 1850s, right? Yeah. So they, you know, obviously the South hates this Tariff Act because it's going to cost them more to buy their stuff. It's just logically speaking, right? And tariffs are kind of a, you know, even today it's a question tariffs. But
we had a tariff war with your country.
Oh, well,
because Trump slapped a bunch of tariffs on stuff, and Trudeau turned around and he slapped tariffs on maple syrup.
Yeah, that's fun.
That was so
thing works out. But tariffs been going back for forever and ever and ever. But again, you look back at you look back at some of the stuff Calhoun said, and you know, and the other people that they talk about is, you know, I think it was Herman Melville called John Brown the Meteor, and he but this stuff, and I think what was fun, you know, I know we always do our what did you learn thing towards the end of this, but just kind of do it now. I think what's fun about the secession talk was when you study it to see how many things, how it just was building upon building, and how a lot of people on the federal side has had their head in the sand through all this.
They really did, and they kept trying. You know, there was so many compromises made, and they were just they were trying to put off the inevitable, which, as you said, it goes back to the Constitution. I mean, there was divisions back then, especially between, you look at somebody like Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson. They had a completely different view of how the economy should work. I think, Jefferson was more for the states' rights part of it, and Hamilton was more kind of the federalist part of it, and there was that, learned that from the musical Alexander Hamilton, which is...
Haven't seen it. Was it Jefferson who said about, and I could be wrong with this, I'm just going off my memory here. Was it Jefferson who said about slavery was like holding a dog by the mouth? You don't let, a wolf, you don't let go, but you don't like it. Was that Jefferson who said that? It was one of them, but
yeah.
So it was whoever that was. It was around. I thought it was Thomas Jefferson, but I'm wrong.
Well, Jefferson owned slaves, but now then again, owning slaves doesn't mean that you agree with it. Just like we talked about that one guy in the podcast who owned slaves, and he was like, "I don't agree with this, but here I am, an owner."
Yeah. Well,
I can't remember what his name was. There's been a few people that have hopped on here. Oh, hey, John. I think this John that's hopped on here. I think that is Buck from our roundtables.
Oh, okay, cool.
I think that's him. Hey, Denise. Good to see you, Denise.
But what's funny is, and people can debate. This is kind of John Brown in my head now. People could debate John Brown, plus minus all day long. It depends on where you're from, I guess. And I think you needed someone like him to kind of start the ball, right? Because I think you need, like in any of these things, you need that one. I don't want to say lunatic, but he was definitely nuts. He was in the miniseries with Ethan Hawke really showed that.
That was really, really good.
But it was the thing that needed to happen to push it, and so like we said before, if this thing had sputtered on for 20, 30 more years,
I know warfare would have been completely different.
How much more miserable it could have been.
Well, you saw how much the Civil War evolved in just those 5 years. You go from fighting Napoleonic style tactics to you're basically at trench warfare at the end of it, as well as, kind of what Sherman does with the March to Sea, what Sheridan and Just for Leonard with his stupid hat does in the Shenandoah Valley. Like warfare changed so much in those years that the Civil War was fought. But yeah, like I agree, like had it waited another 20 years, who knows what the technology would have been. But like we also said in the podcast, the thing about studying secession is it's not Abraham Lincoln that causes them to secede. That is like kind of like a spark, that's part of it. But it's like when you look at the battles of the Civil War, like Antietam doesn't just happen. There's all these things that have to happen. And if certain things don't happen, you don't have Antietam, right? Yes, I see your shirt.
Does Antietam. But you know what though? God, what knew you were gonna get that in there?
Chemo.
Yeah, thanks for that, Andrea, by the way.
She wrote me a nice little card, and now I can feel like I'm getting hugged by OO.
Well, that's great. Does it have one arm? Is it like Bill Belichick's? But again, you can see though. Oh no, there you go. Now it's much more accurate. Much better look now. But you know what though is you can see how they did know the issue was coming because you saw these compromises coming. We talk about the compromise of 1850, right? So after Mexico, you have these new territories coming in, and they're trying to decide now because they know slavery is an issue, and they know how it's can overturn the apple cart here.
Yeah,
you got Utah, New Mexico coming in. They're going to decide if it's free or not. California is going to come in, admit as a free state. Lakers notwithstanding, Andrea, by the way. Texas was already a slave state, but they lost a lot of their territory. But then what they did was this gave them that Fugitive Slave Act. That was their sop to throw back to them, saying, okay, here's the deal, though. We're going to take some of Texas away, and we're going to give these guys a choice of free or slave. But if you catch a slave in Massachusetts, you got to return his ass back. And obviously that's not going to play well when you're looking at the abolitionist movement on these where I am, right? Guys like Garrison, guys like, all those people, because that pissed them off tremendously, right?
Yeah.
In that 1850s, people study the 1860s a lot, as they should. They should always study 1860s. But I think if you study the 1850s that lead up into it, the pregame, if you want to call it.
Yeah, and not just the Lincoln-Douglas debates either. I find that is a heavily studied area. And I get it, like the Lincoln community is going to study that quite a bit, but I think it gets a little bit like it's up here and everything else that
Lincoln
happens
community, them, huh?
but Lincoln Douglas debates are up here, and they're very, very important in the whole thing of the Civil War and Lincoln's thinking on slavery, and just like, you know, and they're like, it's just interesting how the two of them debated. And that was, you know, something that was often mentioned between the two of them. But there's all this other stuff that's happened. It needs to be brought up here as being equal with those debates.
Yeah,
you know.
Oh, hey, David. Hey, Brian. You know what? Though the Lincoln Douglas debates, though, since the Super Bowl's tomorrow, we could say a Super Bowl, right? We don't say the big game, that whole stupid thing, but
Super Bowl.
The Super Bowl. Anyway, but there can be a Super Bowl if the Patriots aren't in it, though. Shouldn't it be like the OK Bowl? I mean, the JV, but I don't know. Let's digress. But, but if you think about a football thing, that Lincoln Douglas debate is like the coin toss, right, for the kickoff, because that happened right 1858, right? Was when the Senator. So you go back to 1854 when the Kansas Nebraska stuff was going on, right? All that stuff was going on, and this is when Stephen Douglas was really kind of getting ramped up with this.
He was with his, you know, popular sovereignty, and then you have like Charles Sumner getting caned as well. Like there's all this, like the other thing we said in the podcast too, is there's a lot of violence in that period, especially from 1850 to 1859 that happens, that again, doesn't really get talked about, I think, as much as it should. And there is a really good book about it, which, oh my God, I happen to have it. Look at me being organized. Field of Blood by Joanne B. Freeman, which is about the violence in Congress and the road to the Civil War. So this looks specifically at Congress. What are you giggling about?
Just the fact that you just happen to have that book. Oh, I just have a book called Field of Blood sitting here.
This is what I used for research. I used some of it. No, Jay Price actually makes a mention that in Battle Cry of Freedom, which I also have here by James McPherson, he does a really good job as well of
talking books today.
Talking about, I got a ton of books talking about the lead up to the Civil War. Oh yeah, Andrea mentioned that she did get the hoodie off of Howard University website. So
she mentioned that when she told me she got that for you a month or two ago. I was like, oh wow, that's awesome.
I'd actually been wanting one forever.
No, that's good. She hooked you up. And she got me something nice too. She got me some
no, it's awesome.
John Wilkes Booth stuff. That was really, really cool. So I definitely appreciate that. And Jacob mentions Bloody Kansas. So, you know, this is 1855, mid 1800s with this, 1856, right in that area. You know, when you got these northern carpetbagger type people going down there to kind of take over the lands, and Missouri thinks the land's really theirs, and it causes all these issues. But you know who gets involved in that again is John Brown, right?
Yep.
So he comes down again with that Potawatomi. Can I ever say that damn Potawatomi, the massacre in 1856, and he kills those 5 pro-slave guys. But what that does, it puts all the national focus on Kansas that was already simmering over these land battles to focus again on this issue of slavery, and it became that symbol of that North-South controversy.
Yeah,
like that's that.
Sorry, go ahead.
It became that epitome of everything that was going wrong, even though ironically it wasn't necessarily about slavery at the beginning. And what's funny is one of my friends, John, is a University of Missouri graduate, right? He's not a history guy, that he wouldn't be interested in something like this, but they still hate Kansas because of this. And they have their big rivals was KU and Missouri. And they'll talk, they know about this the way you know about Labatt's Blue. That's how much they know about the history. Well, no, I mean they a lot. They don't like it, but they know it.
Oh God!
But it's a big part of their history. And whether you're a history buff or not, they all know about Bloody Kansas. I mean, it's like part of their culture, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And speaking of John Brown, do you know I knew John Brown's Body, that song, before I knew Old Canada? Thanks to my grandmother. She used to sing it all the time. She's huge into John Brown for some reason. That was her random historical figure that she was just really into.
Well, he's fascinating. I mean, you could say he's. I mean, we mentioned before last week that I think it was last week that he was somebody who really influenced a guy like John Wilkes Booth, right?
Yep.
Because he was at the execution. You know, he saw a guy who was willing to die for what he believed in. You know, whether you're the North or South, whether you like Brown or hate Brown, he was a guy I think in history had to happen right? It just had to happen, and it was bound to happen eventually. There's always one nut. There's always one nut.
Well, there's always one person that kind of is like, like he was the meteor too, like that, and that's a very accurate description of him by Herman Melville. But the other thing about Booth too is Booth, I think, revered John Brown. He saw him as a hero, and he saw Lincoln as being the exact opposite to that. Even though Booth and John Brown had very different views on slavery, here's Booth seeing him as a hero and Lincoln as like this tyrant, and you got to wonder if that whole, like, if Booth thought that looking at John Brown as a hero, if he started thinking back to those prophecies about himself and thinking maybe this is, started getting in his head, maybe this is my destiny to be like John Brown.
And I mean, it goes, all this stuff is going on leading up to John Brown. So, this stuff in Kansas is going on, and then, the campaign of 1856, you got Fremont against Buchanan, and Buchanan, again, I don't want to say he has his head in the sand, but he's a Democrat, and he
absolutely did.
Well, I think he was running. I think he knew, he's like, please just don't let it happen on my watch. It's going to happen, just not on my watch.
He was a puppet by that point. If anybody's looking for a really good description about the Buchanan administration in the months before the Civil War, in Ted Widmer's book, Lincoln's Greatest Journey, which is about his inaugural journey, Widmer does a really good lead up to Lincoln's journey. And he talks about the Buchanan administration, about how Buchanan was just like a puppet, and you have people like Floyd are really running the things at that point, Secretary of War Floyd. And at that point, Floyd is he's shipping arms down south, and Buchanan, either he doesn't know about it or he just doesn't give a shit. But he's also a lame duck, right? And I think to your point, Darren, you're right that, it's just not on my watch. It's kind of like, what else can I deal with, besides this shit happening at Sumter?
I think what it is, though, is I think ultimately, I think it was just going to come down to a situation where, he was still trying to throw band-aids on the entire thing. And what he was basically doing was when Kansas was going to come in as a slave state, he wanted to let them in as a slave state, and that pissed the Kansas people off because they wanted to vote, and that caused a lot of issues.
Yep, exactly.
What was her question? Was Sumner a member of the secret Six?
Seven?
No, it was, God, who the hell? It was Higginson, Sam Howe, Theodore Parker, Franklin Sanborn, Garrett Smith, and George Stearns. That's who that was. That was a secret six. And it used to be a really good bar in Harper's Ferry that's no longer there. But no, he wasn't part of the secret, but it was those guys.
There's a few more comments here to read too. Ryan, speaking of book enabling, he got Carney's letters from the Peninsula. Never looked forward to reading a book more. Ryan's actually been really good about posting the books that he's been getting and tagging the podcast account in it. So that's really cool.
Yeah, no, it's
what else do we have here? Andrea said she's got a small shelf with all her books, but the audiobook library is insane. I prefer reading, but I do listen to audiobooks. And John P says it's pronounced Potawatomi, named after a tribe that owns a bunch of casinos around here now. Okay, Jacob's got a question. Didn't Brown approach Sumner for financial support and wanted to touch the coat he was caned in?
That's the rumor. I mean, I've heard that too, but who knows? I mean, I like to think so. That'd be kind of cool if he actually did. I don't know if it actually did though, but that's there's a lot of when he became when he became more of a legend afterwards, the legend of John Brown kind of opened up a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened though.
Yeah, well, it's the same with Lincoln though. Like, there's a lot of like legend about Lincoln, the stuff that isn't true. That's kind of been blown out of proportion. It's the same with John Brown as well. Hey, Al.
Oh, what's going on now? I don't see people signing on like you. I don't see these people like you do. Well, probably for the best. You probably block me. Canadian, anti-American, because that tariff thing was stuck on.
Yeah. Well, hey, maple syrup. Hey, Mike from Arlington.
Anyway, hello, Al. How are you? Now, we mentioned a million times from the great Civil War Lampoon.
Ryan said, why is the fight inevitable? Many other countries abolish slavery comparatively peacefully. Can't we see a wealthy North compensate Southern slave owners for abolition like Britain? Is slavery more of a pillar of society in the U.S. than anywhere else? Is it intertwined with other regional splits than bring it all to a head? why does abolish require a war in the US? I think part of it is the culture.
Well, don't forget the
It
international
created a
slave trade was
very,
banned,
yeah,
right? It was banned, so they got rid of it. But I think, part of me sometimes, like when I was younger, I was thinking, like, why didn't they just say, okay, we're going to give slaves $1 a year and not slaves anymore? Now they're paid, right?
yeah,
But I don't think it was like, I think your point was just part of their culture.
it was.
But I think though it was beyond the economics too, because they felt that they were being, if something like that were to happen, it would have been the same issue before that Calhoun had said, right? Yeah. If the Fed is saying we got to pay these people now, we're not going to pay these people. Screw what they say. Yeah. This is the way we do it. I mean, one thing I'll say about people in the South, Mary, I've been in the South a million times. They're headstrong people, right?
They
and you know what else?
They
and they definitely don't like people like me.
Oh, they don't like people like me
Massachusetts.
Either. They don't like down, they don't like some of them don't like Canadians either. No. The other thing too with the South and slavery was it was white supremacy. A lot of slave owners did believe that they were superior, and that definitely factors into it as well. And I wonder if there just wasn't that attitude in places like Britain where it was abolished peacefully. Now, Lincoln had different ideas for how he wanted to abolish slavery, including, I think he was going to use Delaware as kind of the, just to see if it would work, but compensation. So
but you mentioned
slave owners.
Something you said a second ago is true, believe it or not. I'm going to say you're right on this, right? Is you mentioned the thing about they weren't equals. Well, 1857, you got the Dred Scott trial, right?
Exactly.
And so you've got the Supreme Court, the law of the land, saying that basically there is no, you don't have to, the black man has no rights a white man should have to follow. So you're hearing this right from the top, that they're not equal. So why pay them? So that's so, and there's so much that goes into that, and also the social, not social media, the media stuff, the pop culture. You have Beecher Stowe's book come out, 1852, exactly. Uncle Tom's Cabin, which I read not too long ago because I wanted to read a book.
Never read it before.
Really?
We should. No, I haven't.
Must have been the big words. Tough.
Yeah, it was the big words.
Too many undulations in there for you. Okay, fine.
Yep.
And that's why when we get reviewed, we say we swear too much because of that. Yep. She's talking about you, by the way.
I know. I wear that proudly.
But seriously though, you got people up here, the North, reading these books about how bad the slaves are being treated and how cruel slave life was by the Harriet Beecher Stowe book. So now it's firing up on the northern side, right? Yeah. So you got the South who is pissed that the North is already infringing on them economically and socially. Now you've got the people in the North thinking, what the hell? This is our country. What the hell's going on in this damn country? And so you can see where it's all going. You really can.
Oh yeah. Barbara has a question. What if any interaction was there between Buchanan and Lincoln before the inauguration? I don't think any. Not much.
I don't think there's any at all. I think he just,
he was powerless.
I think Buchanan jumped on Air Force One, Mary, and just flew away.
Yep.
Let's go with that.
As soon as
write that on your blog. That's exactly what happened.
I should.
But I think that's what happened. Though. I think once he was out, he's like, we'll see you later. We'll talk about him. We talked to him a lot about the when we started talking about the Fort Moultrie thing. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can't believe you didn't go to Fort Sumter when you were there. That sucks.
The boat wasn't running, and I was with people who were not into the Civil War.
Can't swim. It's not that far. It's like a mile.
Sharks.
That's fair.
I'll swim. I'll swim if you do.
See me swim. Trust me.
Maybe I'll get a paddleboard and paddleboard out there.
But what's cool about that area, though, and that was my favorite part of that podcast, was talking about stuff about Charleston. Because Charleston is awesome. It's one of the, if not my favorite city to go to, and I've been there a handful of times. And that whole Fort Moultrie area is really, really cool.
Yeah.
But the whole town, it's such a fascinating area. You go over that Ravenel Bridge and you see the whole city, and it's all church steeples. And there's an alley there. I can't remember the name of it now, but there's if you've been to Charleston, you see all the churches. There's a million churches in Charleston, right? And so it's right near the cemetery where John C. Calhoun is buried, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's an alley, and that's what they used to do duels, and where hookers used to proposition people and all kinds of stuff. And, they did it in that alley because it was the only place in the city that you could go that you could not see a church steeple.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, they thought that you could do whatever you want because God can't see you because there's no church steeple. So that was the place that I imagine that must have been like downtown Goderich on a Saturday night, probably.
Yep, exactly. Down at the
chicanery going on.
Be down at the area we call the 5 Points. Yes, we have an area called the 5 Points here.
Really?
Yep. Yeah, I'll take a picture for you one time. It's not like in Gangs of New York, but we call it the 5 Points anyway.
Oh, okay.
Mike says that in Virginia, there was a lot of debate about secession and it was split 50-50. Don't know if that was about joining the southern states or letting them go peacefully, but when Lincoln called for troops from Virginia to suppress the rebellion in South Carolina, that ended the debate in Virginia and they joined the Confederacy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing too. And we mentioned before was this John Brown thing. One thing it did do is it freaked out a lot of the people in Virginia. And you started to see these towns coming up with militias, not just Virginia, but everywhere, and so those little militia groups to defend against the slavery uprisings were really the beginning of these Confederate regiments in these towns. William C. Oates in the 15th Alabama, down Pike County, Alabama.
Yeah.
He was in charge of a militia. And these were all designed to specifically protect the town against slave uprisings. There really wasn't an organized police or anything like that back then. So that's how it was. And so when the war finally happened, you had ready set regiments in a lot of these cases, right?
Yeah.
They weren't trained, didn't have the best material, but they had the mindset was already there.
Exactly. Yeah. That was one thing I had never really thought of before when you brought that up in the podcast was like, wow, they've been forming this, what would become the Confederate Army for a really long, for a long time. Considering, and the Union, like most of them are out in California because they're not.
Oh, exactly.
They're not seeing the South as being a threat.
Well, in 1861, before Sumter happens, you can probably make a case, at least manpower wise, not numbers, of course, but maybe even numbers too. But the Confederates were in a better position to help get started in a war because most of the army was out west. They weren't the army that would become the next couple of years.
Yeah.
And so, and they had been preparing for it. But we talked before about how when Charleston was going to attack Fort Moultrie, when they ultimately went to Sumter, the stuff that they had, I mean, 3 swords, 3 pistols, like 1,000 broken John Burns muskets. And that's what they had. I mean,
one of the places where a lot of that stuff had been shipped to. So it was shipped from north to the south, but it happened to be shipped from LSU. Or to LSU.
Glad we don't have militia groups now. Yeah, good thing, John. Thank God we don't have those. Jeez.
One of the places where Floyd was sending the stuff was down to the Louisiana State Seminary, later LSU, where Sherman was. And that really got Sherman angry because this stuff would be shipped and he was powerless to do anything because secession had happened. And where it said US, it had all been crossed out. And that got him fucking fired up.
No. Hey, Allie K.
Hey, Allie K. Hey, Allie, last night I was wanting to watch the Boston College hockey game, but I couldn't because the game that TSN chose to air was Minnesota and Wisconsin.
Yeah. How did that work out, Allie?
Anyway, I watched the Bruins and they won. So
yeah.
I got to watch some New England game anyway.
Gophers are a good team. Gophers aren't bad. Yeah. But
Jim makes mention that Buchanan did pick up Lincoln at the hotel the morning of the inauguration and rode with him in an open carriage to the Capitol. Stephen Douglas held Lincoln's hat while he delivered the inaugural address.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's good to know. No, because it's funny. Buchanan kind of definitely disappears right after what was going on with that. But that election happens, and it was kind of like a done rubber stamp that, okay, if Lincoln gets in, we're seceding. They knew that went back to 1850, right? Not Lincoln, but just they knew that if that was going to happen. And I always thought that, this is where the Republicans getting elected really made these guys jump the gun. It was more perception than reality. Mm-hmm. I wonder, Lincoln had said those quotes specifically about, he doesn't care if it's slave or non-slave as long as the states. He obviously changed his tune as the war went on, but seceding in December of 1860 for South Carolina, got the whole thing going, was really the kind of the beginning of the end for that Southern way of life. And it was kind of self-inflicted in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, South Carolina was leading the charge right from 1850 at the Nashville Convention. You know, they were the ones that were trying to convince people, but they didn't have enough delegates. Like
Right.
Tennessee sent the most delegates. Now it's held in Tennessee, but they were allowed to send as many delegates as they wanted to this Nashville Convention. But then when they had the second one in June of 1850, it was the fire eaters, like it was the real extremists. So Jefferson Davis was at that one, and so was a guy, his last name I think was Rhett, and he gave a really interesting speech there too, just about how the North was going to take away slavery and all this other stuff. The other difference between North and South too is the technology. Like the North really embraced railways. The South, not so much. Like the South was such a clusterfuck because they had all these different gauges of railways. And that's why when Lincoln gets to Baltimore, he has to be taken across town in a, like, you know, move from one train to the other because of the different gauges that ran through the city.
Yeah, no, it's
it wasn't all uniform. And the South actually did not brace education the way that the North did either. So it's a whole cultural
well, that's the Herman Hopp thing, right? The guy he has a big house in Gettysburg that was on sale recently for $900,000, and you know, didn't forget, but it's okay. Hey Scott, good. Thanks for jumping on. Good to see you.
Yeah, hey Scott. Jacob said, I think Lincoln always hated slavery. His father and mother were both anti-slavery Baptists, but I think he recognized he didn't have the power to free the slaves without constitutional amendment. Yeah, Jacob, he did. I think like inwardly he was an abolitionist, but as a politician, he couldn't, you know, be that radical. And he recognized that. That's why he had, like, you look at his evolution as a politician, he goes from like, you know, compensated emancipation to, okay, we're going to ship them away from here and not even have them live here once they're emancipated, to finally where he gets to in the last speech he makes, where he's considering, you know, citizenship for them.
Well, he had to say the right things. He wouldn't be the first politician to say something and diffuse a situation, right? I mean, he clearly, history shows that he was not for slavery. I mean, he did the Emancipation Proclamation. Obviously, everybody knows is more of a military thing, and you know, stuff like that. But I mean, obviously, there's no doubt that was the final straw. But you know what, though? Don't you think the South was looking to go anyway? Don't you think that even if Douglas or Breckinridge, one of those guys, had won that election, they wouldn't go? They were like, you know what? They were just waiting for the excuse at that point.
Yeah. And Lincoln was the perfect excuse for it. And the interesting thing about that election, we did a blog post this morning, which I got up there a couple hours ago. And one of the things that we mentioned in the blog post is that Sherman, it's specifically focused on Sherman and his reaction to secession. And Sherman was not even going to vote for Lincoln if he voted. Sherman was going to vote for Bell.
Yeah.
Sherman was not a fan of Lincoln's, because Sherman saw Lincoln as, you know, in letters he wrote to his wife, Sherman saw him, he's like, if this guy gets in, it is going to be war. And even Sherman there's some degree that Sherman had his head buried in the sand about it. Like he just didn't want to deal with it because he'd finally found a place he could call home in Louisiana where he could move his family because he hated Ohio.
Yeah. Everybody hates Ohio.
I agree with that too. Ohio. I mean, I would not want to fucking live in Lancaster, Ohio, or any part of Ohio for that matter. Anyway, but then he's realizing with secession, he can't stay.
No, I mean, I think Jacob makes about Breckinridge in one. It's, you know what though? It's arguable that's the thing is 1850, South Carolina basically decided they were going. They that far back, they kind of decided. So you wonder, you know, maybe the South secedes on the North at that point. If Breckinridge, you never know.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, what I mean is they basically say we're going to do our own thing. We want nothing, you know, or maybe the North just says, maybe they had that backwards. Maybe the North decides they don't want to be part of this whole South thing. Maybe it's funny how they should be on the other foot there. Who knows? But I think Lincoln must have been seen as obviously such a radical.
He was
a guy who was elected. Like, think of the craziest radical running now, and if he wins, how people would have thought, like, I don't want to be here for this dumpster fire, right?
He was. A lot of it was probably media driven as well. Right. You know, by the Southern newspapers, because I mean that would have been one way that it was driven. But yeah, he was seen as extremely radical. you know, he goes into that 1860 convention not the guy that they think is going to win. You know, but I think one of the reasons he does win the nomination is because of Simon Cameron putting all the Pennsylvania votes, and that's how Simon Cameron gets his position for not very long as Secretary of War. And then John Postlewaite makes a good point that he says that, you know, South Carolina was outnumbered 4-1 by their slaves. Like
that's why they had militias existed.
Yeah,
they're scared to do it. I mean, think about it. If you're you know, if you're in a situation where you're afraid, and you're hearing these things like in Haiti and Jamaica, in this all this stuff going on, and John Brown comes, of course you're gonna be worried about that. I swear to God, anybody mentions
I
that
was just
chili,
gonna say, like,
Skyline chili.
Skyline.
I remember about a year ago, Mary, I was out there in Cincinnati, and she told me before I went, I'm basically not allowed to touch the Skyline chili. I'm glad I did.
I never have.
Horrible.
I had a friend try to take me there one time, and I was like, nope, we're not doing that. Just something about it. I was like, nope, I need to nope the fuck away from that place.
Yeah, no,
not
don't
doing
talk about
it. Jay Price says that the Ohio Turnpike is the only redeeming thing about it. Truth. The Ohio Turnpike's not bad. I've been on it many a time driving to Cedar Point.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, you know, no one's a big fan of the Massachusetts Turnpike up here. Where's Frail, by the way?
I don't know where he is. Last time I was on the Mass Turnpike was when I drove to Boston in my dad's Buick. That was fun.
Mass Turnpike,
me driving a big Buick pimpmobile thing. Pretty awesome. It was white as well, and I had to drive it in the city. That was a fun time. I didn't swear once, I swear.
No, but I mean, with the secession thing, though, even, you know, part of New York City wanted to secede at different points, right? I mean, Ryan mentions, parts of New England wanted to secede in the early 1800s. They didn't want to fight you clowns, right? Yeah. Maybe I could be a Canadian today. We could be rooting for the Maple Leafs right now. Who knows, right?
You're practically Canadian.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You've got a hoodie. You've got the attitude.
Mass Turnpike is trash. Oh, Allie. You haven't been here in a while. It's so much better now. They took all the tolls out. It's so much easier now. Plus, if you jump on the Turnpike, it takes you to Treehouse Brewery. That's what's great. It's like the Golden Road. It's like the Wizard of Oz.
Ryan said, to be fair, New England flirted with secession in the 1810s. As you said, not all that keen on fighting Canada.
What?
Not all that keen on fighting Canada. Well, I mean, look at us. You guys came up and burned down York, which became Toronto, and we gave you
deserved it.
Well, we gave you the biggest fuck that shit. Came down and burned your fucking White House down. Look at us go. And then we wrote sorry and swear all over it. Oh yeah. We've got the torches and we're just saying sorry as we're throwing them on your White House.
You know, Fernando Wood, another fun lover we talked about with Johnson.
Every time I think of Fernando Wood, I think of the ABBA song Fernando. I see it as being his theme song.
Oh, no, thanks for bringing that up, by the way. You know,
I feel like I need to take all his scenes from Lincoln and put them into one video and put the song Fernando.
Oh God. Oh, great. Good habit talk. But no, but it's but it's interesting though, because there's a lot of places that wanted to see that. I mentioned New York City, and Jim just mentioned again. They want to know part of a lot of different things, and I could live without New York City actually.
I've never been there before.
Really?
Yeah, I do want to get there though to see that Booth statue or Shakespeare.
Oh, the Shakespeare one.
The Booth brothers put up, and I do want to see Alexander Hamilton's grave.
Mm-hmm. John and Grant too.
Yep, I do want to see those.
And you can see Fernando Wood's grave.
Yeah,
he's buried in New York City.
I'll go there and play Fernando in his honor. I'll sing it for him.
That's what America needs.
That would require a call me maybe level of drinking.
Oh God,
which is not going to happen for another.
Drunken singing in a cemetery from ABBA.
Yeah.
Almost has to happen now.
22 more days and that can happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Not that I'm counting down or anything.
It's so funny, but yeah. And talking about these roads, the roads, but Boston roads, the worst. Especially Cape Cod roads.
I know.
Boston roads, downtown Boston, very bad. What's funny about the Boston roads? Well, the problem with the Boston roads is they're all one way. And what's cool about it, people say, this is so funny too, like my New York friends, Mary, they go, well, Boston's impossible to drive around it because you don't know where you are half the time. We have 1st Street, 2nd Street, you just know where you're going. But people don't realize the Boston roads are all alphabetical. Arlington Street, Boylston Street, Clarendon Street, Dartmouth Street. It's A, B, C, D. People don't know that. You'll be a Boston guy to figure that out, Mary.
Oh.
But the travelers don't. They don't understand that that's all alphabetical.
Imagine driving around Boston in a car that has no shocks left.
Oh well,
that was my dad's Buick. I'm shocked the thing made the trip there and back.
Yeah. Well, hey Amelia, just jumping on.
Hey Amelia, Jay Price's literally has to run.
Where are you running to, Jay? Who's chasing you? My God,
says the former runner.
So I think she's like Whitey Bulger reincarnated or something. She's always on the run. It'd be cool if you know who that was, Mary.
Who?
See?
No, who was it? Say it again.
Whitey Bulger.
See something to do with the Boston Marathon?
Yes, that's exactly who he was.
I don't know. Yes, I have no idea who he is.
Yep, you got it.
No, I didn't.
He was
serious?
No, he was the guy the movie The Departed was made after. He was like the big mafia guy they finally caught and he died.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know who he is. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm kidding you, Jen. I know you're running a marathon. That's pretty sweet. And hey, Phil.
Some new people jumping on today. That's good.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah,
nice. And but if we could real quick, if we go back to the history thing, I want to talk about roads. The worst roads is that friggin' Beltway in Washington, Baltimore. That is the world. Virginia. Oh my, the traffic going like Tyson's Corner, Virginia. Yeah. Screw the hell out of that. You could sit there for days on that traffic. The hell with that.
Yeah.
You know?
I miss road trips, I have to say though.
Whitey Bulger sounds like a shitty British breakfast cereal.
It does actually.
Actually it does. But he ran the city of Boston, Irish mob.
Yeah, Rhines is another great Irish gangster.
Yeah. Bye, Jen.
FBI informant, psycho.
He was a bad dude. He was a bad dude. And what's so funny, Mary, was real quick talking about Whitey Bulger, is he had one of his big gunmen, one of his big assassins. His name was Stephen Weeks, same last name as me. I think it was Steve. I haven't thought about him in a while. And every once in a while, somebody would sit there and say, "Hey, you related to that mafia guy?" And I would always say, "Well, it depends who's asking." That's what I'd say. People just sit there and look at me.
The only one I get asked if I'm related to is the director David Fincher.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Never heard of him.
You never heard of David Fincher?
No.
He directed Seven.
Did he run the Boston Marathon?
Where is that fucking sign? Jesus.
Oh, so about that South Carolina, which, by the way, see the flag? Okay, well, that's normal. Okay.
Fucker.
Yeah, I bet the Beltway traffic is, good point, Mike. I bet it's not as bad. I drove down to Gettysburg last summer a couple times. I went down there and I made it through Connecticut, right down to Gettysburg. And I don't think I hit the brakes once, which is unheard of going through Connecticut, New York. Unheard of,
Yeah, I have to be really careful when I'm driving to certain places because my mother has figured out how long it takes me to get there. Or she thinks she knows how long it takes me to get there, and I have to wait a little bit to call her because then she'll be like, "You are driving too fast."
There's
I go with the traffic.
Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, when I used to live down in Texas back a million years ago, the airport is probably like 4 miles wide. It's a big airport, DFW, right? Mm-hmm. And what would happen was you'd have to drive through from like Irving, like what the Cowboys used to play, to Arlington, where I used to live. You had to cut through the airport, and they were so afraid of people speeding. So it was a toll road. So you would pull in, you get a ticket, you would drive, then you get to the end of the airport and you would give the ticket and you pay for your $2, whatever it was. But they timed it. So if your time of your ticket was stamped at a time that made you go more than 60 miles an hour to get there, they give you a $25 speeding ticket at the same time.
Wow.
Here's your ticket, and here's a ticket for speeding.
Here's my new sign.
I spelled it right. Impressive,
Yep.
But that's that. So, okay, well, nice sign. But nice flag. Yeah, like South Carolina. See, next time when we talk about secession, Mary, when we talk about Fort Sumter, I'll put the big red flag up because that's the
because those movies turn the other way.
The other way, and it's red. So yeah, I actually saw Big Red. It's at the Citadel down in South Carolina. I was in Charleston last time. That's a pretty cool flag right there.
Yeah, I need more flags in my life. I don't have enough.
No, I thought I hear that phrase today. Okay, I'll go with it.
I actually have I have a U.S. flag.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't own a Canadian flag. I have a U.S. flag.
Well, I get a Canadian flag, but anyway. So let's talk about South Carolina as we try to get back on subject here. Okay, it's I found the whole Fort Moultrie thing fascinating.
It is,
and especially when you go down there enough times, and you've been to Fort Moultrie, and you know other places have. I mentioned that not John Wilkes Booth, Edgar Allan Poe. They always look the same to me. Edgar Allan Poe was there as a sergeant major in 1827. Sergeant Major, tend to that man, Sergeant Major. But what was interesting about was the politics, though, right? Was we talked before about Francis Pickens, the governor. And he wasn't a guy who was elected. He was kind of like your premier up there, True Daddy, right? He wasn't elected by popular vote. He was
our prime minister.
That's what I mean. But he was. It's what I'm trying to say was whatever it was. Whatever you communists up there in Canada do, but he's had very little power at the time, right? He was unelected by the popular vote. He was elected by the legislature, and I guess a better comparison would be the Queen of England. Probably,
that's what you said in the
podcast.
Trudeau has a lot of power as prime minister. It's just a different way of voting than what you guys do. Like when he sends
a militia to get you for drinking at age 15.
Exactly.
Line,
because Trudeau never did that.
No, I'm sure he didn't. But he had very little power. We mentioned on the podcast, the one thing he did have under his control was that local militia. The governor was in charge of militia. That's all he really did. I mean, he was more of a figurehead than anything. So he was also the cousin of John C. Calhoun. So, that must have been a fun Christmas over that house when they'd come by.
There was that
John's coming.
There's that great quote from Pettigrew where he was like, South Carolina is not big enough it's not big enough to be a republic, but it's too big to be an insane asylum.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing I didn't mention on the podcast was that James Johnson Pettigrew was involved in the negotiations with Anderson. He was the messenger that had to go take stuff to Anderson when they were trying to figure out what to do. When they're basically in that, can you imagine how tense that would have been in that holding pattern where they know they can't fire and like the Charlestonians know they can't fire because they're trying to negotiate?
Well, you had Buchanan stating you maintain all federal property, but the Charlestonians didn't think it was federal property because they own the land. They were leasing the land to the United States, so they felt it's our land. So what the frig we want with it? And that was always a big issue too. But the fact that was kind of like it was almost like the retirement community of the Army. The people who basically running that guy John Gardner, the colonel, 67-year-old guy about to retire, was kind of basically a nice little cushy little job sitting on the beach. He was a shitty leader. The Army was not prepared, and they were also under control basically to make sure you don't cause an issue, right? But you saw these blue-cladded, these rebellious type of Charlestonians, militia people, getting stronger and stronger and stronger, and you knew that. I mean, they saw them building fences. They measured. They would send people over to Fort Moultrie to measure how big the walls were. Then they saw them building fences for that same height. And so they were doing things like that. So they knew they were going to freaking attack. I mean, anybody.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Like it was just a matter of time. And of course, like everybody's out in fucking California and nobody's concerned about what's going on. And there's a few people that do see it. Sam Houston, who a few people have mentioned him, he sees it. What's going on? And he is a quote very similar to Sherman. Like, if you guys go to war against the North, you're fucked. And he's like, Sam Houston also did say it's going to take away a future generation.
Yeah.
And he was right.
But all that stuff leads. I mean, there's so many things that go up to it. I mean, but you look at some of the people that Gardner had with him. We mentioned on the podcast. You've got Abner Doubleday. That the guy told you didn't invent baseball that you thought he did.
Pardon? You were the one that, and I quote, the guy who invented baseball.
I said that to give you shit.
And I just didn't respond.
You just didn't respond because you don't pay attention. But he also had Jefferson C. Davis. Okay, fine. Jefferson C. Davis was also part of it. Ebenezer Creek, we talked about.
General Reb.
Yep. Sam Wiley Crawford. He's got that really cool beard in the statue at Gettysburg down by the little round top, Speaking of beards, eyes, talked about that, But he had a bunch, but but you had this Buchanan
You just
dictation to basically, well, I was going to say this order basically not to give up any federal land, right?
Yeah.
And so, embarrassing the children again. Okay. But it was interesting because what is he going to do, right? He's being told specifically don't start the thing. And that whole thing with the muskets happens, right? Where they want to get 40 muskets, and Gardner says nope, because that's going to incite them, which he probably was right about.
Yeah, but didn't Doubleday get the muskets, and then he was like, "You got to give those back."
No, what happened? What happened was a guy. This happened later on. This is a guy named Foster. So the mayor of Charleston is like, "Yeah, I'll give you 40 muskets. That's fine. Don't worry about it." But then Gardner says no because it'll piss these people off. So that was the end of that. So later on, Foster, a captain who was going to go over there, he wanted 2 muskets. So he went back over to the Charleston Armory, which was in Charleston, the Federal Armory, which is right in the belly of the beast, right? He stumbles over there and says, "I need 2 muskets." And the guy who's running, a guy named Humphreys, the guy who's running the armory, says, "I can't give you 2, but I will give you 40.
Yep. Ooh.
And the guy's like, "Well, I better get the U-Haul then," right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's going by that mayor's direction to give him 40.
Yep.
And he gets the 40, and he brings them back. And by then, Robert Anderson is in charge, and he's like, "No, you got to get those back, get them out of here." Foster gets pissed. He wires John Floyd, the Secretary of War, and says, "I got these guns, and they make me give them back." Yeah. And Floyd goes, "God damn right, you giving them back. They just got all freaking killed. Get them back." So he's like, so he gives them back. But that's kind of what was going on with all this stuff. It was a tinder box, a powder keg, whatever.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine how tense it was, and everybody up in Washington is basically ignoring it. There's some comments here. Jim mentions Star of the West, that it's not just more of a historical footnote.
Well, what's funny about Star of the West, a couple of things about that, was the guy who owns Star of the West, some New York guy, right, is charging them $1,250 a day to use it.
Yeah,
which is big money back then. Do you want to talk? So, but
do you want me to figure out the conversion on that? 1, 2.
Yeah, please. I know we said. I think we said the podcast was $7.28. I think it came down in today's money. I think you had $1
billion.
But he's charging that much money to use it.
Yeah.
And the other thing I don't think people want to realize is, I think in the mindset, the ship got there and with all the troops, but they got fired upon. It was like the scene of Vacation. Roll them up. They got the hell out.
Yeah, exactly.
They got fired upon by a guy named Peter Stevens, who's the same name as a guy who runs my Civil War Cape Cod Roundtable, by the way. Different guy, though. Age is close, though. I tell you, the age is close, but it is a different guy. But Peter Stevens fires on the Star of the West, fires a warning shot.
Yeah.
Still going, then starts firing real shots, and they lock them up, and they go and they take up. I think a lot of people think that the boat made it. And it didn't.
But you see, Anderson was the last to find out about it, because it gets leaked to the press, but nobody tells Anderson about it, which I think is I was thinking about this morning. I think that might have been deliberate on the part of Buchanan, because he reluctantly sent Star of the West, right?
Well, I mean,
is it Buchanan who sent Star of the West? Yes, it is. It is Buchanan.
It was Buchanan, because it wasn't until March 6th that Lincoln got inaugurated.
Because it was Scott who decided it, although Lincoln in some cases gets credit.
Yeah, well.
Which, no.
Well, about that. A couple of guys, Winfield Scott, for one, we're kind of jumping ahead in the story a little bit, not that we're going to stay on topic, but, guys like Don Carlos Buell, we mentioned, right? Yeah.
Shiloh.
From Shiloh, exactly. And he gets there, and he gets sent down, and he tells Anderson, I think you guys, they didn't tell me to tell you this, but I think you guys should go to Sumter. Now, Fort Sumter, for those who don't know, is on an island, okay, which is, probably about a mile or two off the mainland of Charleston, whereas Moultrie is right across the river from Charleston. I mean, you can stand there and you can see the whole skyline. And it's in the air, not floating in the air, but it's not anchored. I mean, the troops could hit it from basically 3 sides, except the water.
Picturing this floating island.
Yeah, it was like Star Wars, like that Lando Calrissian place, you know.
There's actually a video game which is Bioshock Infinite, which has a lot of Lost Cause and Civil War undertones. And it's about this dystopian, it's utopian gone dystopian society that is called Columbia, and it's floating. So it's up in the sky, and it's literally like the Columbia. But it has like, it's that game I was telling you about that has like this, the Order of the Fraternal Order of the Ravens, which is a John Wilkes Booth worshiping society. But near the end of the game, Columbia ends up burning again. Awesome. Anyway, it just made me think of that. Sorry, I digress.
There you go. But so we were saying before was Buell comes down and he suggests, you need to probably go to Sumter. If you're smart, you'll go to Sumter. And this is funny because, as this is going on, December 20th happens, right? South Carolina secedes. We mentioned before how Pickens, who was in charge, he was the governor, and he had very little power. Now he's basically in charge of his own country in his head, right?
Yeah.
Because now he's the head of South Carolina, and South Carolina. So now he's dealing with Buchanan. So now he's like this, he's like an envoy type thing, and he wants the Federals to peacefully leave Moultrie to get the hell out. But he also sticks that thing in there saying you should peacefully leave. But he's like, but if you don't, there's going to be consequences, and that pissed Buchanan off, right? And that got a lot of people going. And Jefferson Davis, the real one, not Jefferson C. Davis, basically made him retract that.
Yeah.
Who was still a senator at the time. He said, you can't say that to Buchanan. You can't threaten him. You just can't. It was like they were all kind of tiptoeing around each other.
Oh, they were, yeah, because they knew one couldn't fire. If one fired on the other, it was going to be bad. There's a few comments here. Go back up here. Just briefly, Ryan and Allie Kay were talking about Aaron O'Toole, who is the conservative leader in Canada. God, I hope he's never leader. Or no, leader of the Conservative Party. No. Hallie B, we need some McClellan math on this. Have a great day, Lori.
Oh yeah, still are.
Hey, Justin.
Hey, Mike. Jenkins.
And Andrew's running Don Carlos. Was he half Mexican or something? And then Jim mentions that he was an army brat born in Cadiz, Spain. Same place as General Meade.
General Meade, yeah.
Yep. Leonard says Star
Speaking
of the
of
West.
Labatt's blue at age 15, Mary.
Ugh.
Must have been hanging out together back then. Different ages though, but it's okay.
Star of the West is resting at the bottom of the Tallahatchie River here in Mississippi, the same river they dumped Emmett Till in after he was murdered.
And that was a boat that Ed Beers found, right?
Yeah.
Was it?
No.
Was it?
Did he?
No, that's the Cairo. The Cairo. Cairo. Think about that. Yes, forgot about that. But what was we were talking about this whole thing again, but Anderson knew he had to leave Moultrie, but he had to do it. He had to do it secretly because they would have thought that taking Sumter would have been in their mind, and an act, quote John Wilkes Booth, an act of war.
Yeah,
from Jesse Johnson.
Act of war, and you are stuck to it.
And so he's making plans to do it, and he was smart though because he didn't tell anybody. He didn't tell even like Doubleday, which Doubleday
shows
2.
up and he's like, "Time for tea," which was
he shows up with tea, and he's like, "Oh, thanks for the tea, but in 20 minutes we're leaving. We're
Pack
out."
your shit.
And Fort Moultrie was also a place where a fort that you could have your family with you too, right? Mm-hmm. So you would have wives and children. So they snuck them off to Fort Johnson.
Yeah.
And the spies saw them doing it and didn't put one on one together for whatever reason they didn't.
Was Fort Johnson where the Bang Barn was?
I don't know. Maybe. I would imagine it's probably where it was exactly. Most of Charleston, I think, was one of those.
Bang Barn.
But what else he did was pretty smart though. Was what Sumter and what Anderson did. He started moving materials from Sumter to Moultrie to throw them off. And it seems that actually worked because they didn't, once around Christmas, they were supposed to move on Christmas Day, and it was shitty weather, and they had to wait a day to go till the 26th to finally get over there. Yeah. But the way he did that was something though, because you've got two companies, right, that he's going to basically move over there, Company E and Company H, I believe. But you basically you put them on boats and you ship them over there and come back. And the first company doesn't get fired upon, then you do the second one.
Yeah.
And he got them both over there. And so once they found out, and then what else they did too is they trashed the place, right?
Yeah.
They spiked the cannons, they burnt all the carriages, they clogged all the toilets, everything they had to do. They left it a mess, right?
Put Jello in the bathtubs.
Yeah, definitely. The whole deal. But what's funny was when you read some of the documents about that, some of the things they were so angry about, the Charlestonian people, was they destroyed the cannons because they consider them public property. Like,
which
you
is
destroyed
like,
public property.
Like, fuck off.
It's like they vandalized a monument or spray paint on a wall or something.
Anderson, him getting away covertly like that is him giving the biggest fuck you he possibly can to South Carolina, because he's like caught in the middle, right? And it's all political bullshit that's going on. And Andrea, she raised an interesting point about him. Anderson is he's quite a fascinating guy to study, and he seems almost like just a footnote in the history of the Civil War. So Andrea makes mention that he and his wife were slave owners in Kentucky, which they did sell the slaves at some point, obviously, but he was a bit of a Southern sympathizer in some respects. Like, one of his very good friends that he met in the Black Hawk War was Jeff Davis. And Anderson also was the one who mustered Abraham Lincoln into service in the Black Hawk War. But there's some legend that he and Lincoln were friends, but that's apparently not true. But like, Anderson's got these Southern leanings, but he's loyal to the Union at the same time.
Who else had not Southern leanings, but was Sam Crawford. So we mentioned old Sam Wiley.
Yeah,
he was a guy who, not so much Southern leanings as he was a guy who felt the country, the U.S. was overstepping their bounds with a lot of this stuff, and so he was there, but there should be a middle fingers directed towards South Carolina. I don't dislike South Carolina. I love Charleston. I think
I don't dislike it either. Cool, I mean, I love the Carolinas. Like, I've never been to Myrtle Beach. I always wanted to go.
Andrew, you said something about enunciate that I was thinking, but I didn't say it.
What did I say?
I'm glad you did. You said that a little too fast, so I had to double take real.
Oh my God.
So I just sat here and just smiled, but Andrea said what I was thinking, so there you go. Say that slower. Just say it. Andrea and I like that mind meld sometimes. These you're saying that, I'm like, Then she picked up on it, so there you go. So anyways, that's so damn friggin' funny. So there you go. But what were you saying about the Black Hawk War?
Black Hawk. It's my Canadian accent.
That was pretty
hawk
funny.
That is black.
That was pretty funny. That was pretty good. Leonard, that meme is I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, there was a lot of the Southern sympathizers with this stuff, and it's the reality it was. So
I guess one of us has to fuck up on pronouncing something. Let it be me.
You just didn't know. You just said it fine. You just said it so fast. Jim, I don't know how you didn't pick up on that one. First thing you just said that, so I was like, okay, I knew what she meant, but you just hit so fast. I talk fast.
Black Hawk.
She better that one a little bit. But when this stuff is all, trying to get back on topics, since the train has left the station with you on that one too. But it was interesting though, because it really put Anderson, when he was on Sumter, put him in a position where it was like, your move. It was like a chessboard, and that was really what he did was going out there. I guess it would be, if you're looking at mutually assured destruction, that whole thing with McNamara with modern politics, or I guess not modern, but World War II politics with nuclear war, was it put them in a position of strength, because they would have had to. It was easier to defend Sumter than Moultrie. Anybody who's been out there knows. It's just whether it be Castle Pinckney or Fort Johnson or any of them, Sumter was a fortress. It just was.
Yeah.
It was just a perfect place. Yeah. I mean, now not, but I mean back then.
I mean, the fact that he managed to stay there, for as long as they did, and I mean, Lincoln gets that letter on the 4th, right after his inauguration, saying, what?
No, nothing.
No, go on. What?
I just read the comments. Just making me smile.
Well, what is making you smile specifically? What am I missing here?
No, just that picture of what's his name on from there that Leonard put on.
Oh. Anyway, you say I don't fucking pay attention.
Hey, like John says, it's all in good fun there.
Can't remember where I was going, but
I don't know.
No, I don't mind. Like, I mean, Darren busts me all the time. I love it, and I bust him right back. So it's probably one of the best parts of what we have.
It's like that statue up in that cannon statue you found in Canada that time.
Dick Black.
The Dick Black cannon.
Weren't you shocked when you got that picture from me? Dick Black cannon. That sounded really bad.
Look at this cannon I found. Okay.
Well, I was out on a walk run one night, admittedly hungover, so I went out for some fresh air. It was the weekend you drank me under the table. And I went for this walk just kind of along the lake. And then I went through this one older part of town that I like to walk through. And I saw this like tiny, it was a small cannon. It said Dick Black on it. Just took a picture of it for weeks and sent it to him.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
We made up a story about Dick Black.
You were supposed to find his gravesite. You never did, by the way.
He's nowhere. I've looked in the cemetery records for Huron County. He's nowhere.
Maybe he died in the Black Hawk War.
Yes, that's exactly where he did. But he was leader of the Octogenarian Society in Goderich, apparently.
Was that people in their 80s? Is that what that is?
Yeah, I asked my friend who's the archivist for Huron County about him. I said, have you heard of a guy named Dick Black? And he's like, why, yes, I have. And I'm like, do you know where he's buried? No.
Oh, well.
He's not at the Maitland Cemetery. He's not at Colburn Cemetery. He's not at St. Peter's. He's not at any of them. I think
he's probably with George Atzerodt somewhere.
I think he was a Freemason as well.
We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think so. Freemasons are big in my town.
Like tall.
Yeah, and the Orange Lodge.
There you go. Yeah, I'm looking forward when we do a Freemason.
Me too.
A Freemason podcast. That'll be a good one too.
Da Vinci Code was cool to watch the other night too.
Da Vinci Code's a good movie. That's a good movie. I like those movies too. But no, but I think it's interesting though when you look at this whole thing, and you can kind of see literally the storm brewing in the distance and how there was really no real effort to try. I mean, I guess you could say there was with the little ticky-tack compromises they did, but it just seemed like this whole thing was inevitable from the beginning.
It was.
It just was.
It was. I think it was inevitable from the moment like the Constitution came into play. Like it was just, and then you have like all these compromises, and it's just like getting closer and closer to the war. Compromising is not always a good thing.
No, I mean. I think you have to have a certain point of commonality to compromise, though, right? So if you're in a situation where I think the issue of slavery was an inevitable thing. Now England was smart. Ryan's people over there, I know he's Irish, but they got rid of it a long time. They banned it in the 1820s. Why the U.S. didn't was because the Southern economy at the time. They just weren't going to be able to.
It was complete. It was very cultural. I don't think it was a cultural thing like in the South. Like in England, I think it was different, as well as elsewhere. I think it was very much a cultural thing in the South and very much a white supremacist thing.
Well, I think in England they had a common thought to get rid of it.
Yeah.
They all agreed. Here it wasn't that case. It was the South didn't want to get rid of it. The North, and something, a lot of the North didn't really want to get rid of it either for a lot of it because their industrial economy, places like here in Italy, those industry workers got the cotton from the South, and it affected if they were getting cotton from the South that had labor costs and was going to drive their costs up, so they didn't want it either. And that's a big reason why the 1828 Tariff Act was going on too, is they wanted to keep everything here. They wanted to keep it all American. So as much as, my northern brethren up here want to play, piecemeal all the time with everything, with the South. I mean, we weren't innocent with this either because, it's like the drug dealer who makes the drugs. So someone's got to buy the drugs to keep them going, right?
Yeah.
The North was buying the drugs.
Exactly. Yeah. And so was England. So was France.
And when you put a tariff on to make it more expensive to buy stuff elsewhere, you have no choice but to buy it from here. Yeah. Right. So there's that. Yeah. Right.
Exactly. David has a question. Have you heard about the discovery of the 357th mass soldiers on Folly Beach in 1987?
I've heard about that, but I haven't. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't remember the details of it. I remember reading about it though.
And Ryan raised an interesting point. Oh, he mentioned some Freemasons. Rudyard Kipling, Christopher Plummer. Christopher Plummer dies. Will Shatner lives. Christopher Plummer died yesterday. Canadian actor.
He was in that great scene at the beginning of National Treasure, Mary.
I know.
Grandfather.
Do you know, I used to work at a museum in Stratford, Ontario, which is home of the Great Stratford Festival, which my parents actually saw Christopher Plummer act in a few plays there. And there was one day I was out on my lunch and I used to go outside to eat. And if anybody's heard of the actor Colm Feore, he's a Canadian actor. He lived right across the road from the museum and I used to see him out gardening. And I would wave to him, but I never went and talked to him. Anyway, I go back inside after lunch and my coworker was like, "You're going to wish you hadn't left the front desk." And I'm like, "Why?" And he's like, "Christopher Plummer was just in here." So of course I run outside to see if he's still around, but it turned out he was upstairs in the rehearsal rooms and we weren't allowed to go up there when they were rehearsing. But yeah, he came down and had a look in the museum one day while I was on my lunch, and they like, and my coworker was like, "Oh yeah, we see him all the time." And I'm like,
well, he was like in his 90s though, wasn't he? He was older, wasn't
91 or 92.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
I think I'll make 90. You know, but it is something though. But yeah, we'll do the Freemason one. That'll be a good one because there's so much into that. You know, we talked before about, you know, people talk about like the, you know, the Armistead stuff. The cool thing about the Freemasonry thing is, you know, people associate that with the battlefield, but really the best Freemason stories are the prison stories. You know, and people don't really think about those. They think about the battlefield stuff, but you know, I mean, people, you look like Andersonville, for example, right? You know, they had a Freemason tent where the Confederates would provide them shelter. They would give them food. They had their own little culture, you know. And the funeral stories, you know, there's a thing called a Masonic Funeral.
Yep, I've heard of it before.
And a lot of the stories about that. There's a really good story where there was a guy in a boat. I'm blank on his name now. It was John. But anyway, there was a Union gunner, a captain of a boat who committed suicide. This is off Louisiana. This is like 1864, something like that. Well, he shoots himself in the head and dies. Before he dies, he left a note saying he wants a Masonic funeral. And there was really no Masons on the boat, right? So they wire the Confederates in Louisiana saying, "Hey, we need some Masons so we can bring this guy over so you guys can give him a funeral. Is that cool?" So they declared truce for a little while. The boat, they brought him over. They brought the body over, and the Confederates actually had a Masonic funeral for this guy. They had all these guys come up, and they set him up and did all this thing, and they buried this Union guy, and his grave's still there, and it's still taken care of by the lodge in the town of Louisiana where he's buried. That's like their pride and joy, this guy. And yeah, so stories like that are really, really interesting.
Yeah. My favorite is the Claiborne.
Yeah, the Claiborne, and that's another funeral story, right?
Claiborne and Lytle are my two favorite Mason stories, and there's some from you know, along the March to the Sea as well. And just quickly, David, who mentioned the 57 Mass, he said he was one of the discoverers of those bodies.
Oh, okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, wow.
Well, we'll have fun with that. We'll have our friend Bill on that. He's all excited about doing that with us. He's doing a presentation to his lodge via Zoom on Masonry in Gettysburg. I think cool. On Thursday, but he's trying to find a really good Robert E. Lee connection. There really isn't one. You know,
I think the connections you want to find, there might not be. I mean, you stumbled upon the Claiborne thing almost accidentally, and then it had been mentioned in the Simmons biography. But you know, the thing about how he was laid out was something that you have to read between the lines to see. And I think that's a very underreported Mason story, is about Claiborne when he was found after Franklin. You know, and to know how high up he was too in the Freemason world.
He was a Royal Arch. But there is no question anybody in that fraternity, okay, who reads that Claiborne story knows for a fact that's why he was taken. That there was specific things done to him that were very clear. So, but there's a lot of stories like that. We'll have a whole podcast on that. Yeah. I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Me too. I've been into the Freemasons for quite a while. Like, very interesting.
You know, the other Freemason story, I'm doing this thing, was when Mosby's Rangers caught those guys from Custer and they did the death lottery. They all picked and see the Masons didn't have to pick in the lottery.
Wow.
So they're if you were one of the Custer guys and you were a Mason, they'd said, okay, just don't pick, we got you. And so the people, the guys who were Masons didn't have to pick for their lives, and the guys who got killed because they didn't join. So that's why you got to join the Masons, Mary, because I know you can't. But
I
save your life
can't.
someday.
I can join Eastern Star, which I hope to someday.
Well, McKinley joined. McKinley, right?
Yep.
He joined the Freemasons after Third Winchester, right? 1864. So because he saw one of the Union doctors tending to a Confederate and said, "Why are you doing that?" He's like, "Well, it's a Mason." So he decides, I'm going to freaking join this then. He ends up joining a Confederate lodge.
Oh my God.
Winchester. And you know what? They vote on him. He's accepted. So that's kind of goes to show how that bond is. I mean, people talk about that stuff, but it's a real thing. But
Jason's wondering secession's out now. There was
we'll go back. We gotta go back.
No, there was one comment I wanted to get back to that Ryan made about how he said that if he was in the South during the Civil War, there was a 75% chance he probably would have been a rebel, which goes back to something that was raised at the round table. Irish, they fought for both sides.
Yeah, you guys are mercenaries down there, Ryan. Everybody hated the Irish back then. So pick a side.
But yeah, getting back to the secession thing, it was a really interesting episode to do, and definitely looking forward to the second part of it. And I think Jacob did ask what was in that letter that Lincoln got. Basically, we're fucked.
Yeah.
I have 6 weeks of supplies. Please help. We're fucked. And they proceed to debate it in his cabinet for the next 6 weeks.
Well, what can they do, right? Because Buchanan was not going to. They could not send a military ship to Sumter or Moultrie, wherever they were going to go, right? They did end up sending like 163 guys, some random weird number of guys down there. And once the Charleston Mercury got wind of that, it got everybody fired up. It's just like a mad, group of people just looking to fight. It just was. And you've got this military that's admittedly not the strongest. We're not talking about the Army of the Potomac here. We're talking about a bunch of guys, young guys and old guys and families and children. And any move that was going to be used to defend them, replenish them, reinforce them was going to be seen as an act of war. So they had to do it discreetly. And so when you look at the way the whole thing did, I don't want to say it's a miracle Anderson got there, because I think as much as you look back at history, it makes it sound like these Charlestonians were ready to fight. They were just as mismanaged. They were just regular people.
Yeah.
But if they had stayed at Moultrie, they would have got attacked, because there's no question. Moultrie was a public fort. You could go there, have a picnic, right?
Yeah.
Like you do today.
Yeah. But too, they could have attacked from Sullivan's Island. Like there was that. So being out in Sumter, obviously, and Anderson's been told this by many people for quite a while. Like, you got to get out to Sumter. And I think he finally.
Scott told him that. Don Carlos Buell told him that. John Floyd told him that. They all told him, get to Sumter if you can, right?
Because they knew what was going to happen, and I think they really meant business when Beauregard shows up. That's when they knew it was just a matter of time before he ordered that fort fired upon.
Yeah.
And but that's what they had to wait for, though. Like, because Lincoln was like, we're not going to fire these shots, because if the Union fires the first shots.
It was exactly what it was. It was they were basically, well, if we fire whoever fires the first, they were waiting. They're like, don't pull the first punch, but someone's gonna. It was a matter of time, and the Union waited them out. They did. They waited them out.
Yeah. Just back to Claiborne quickly. Wayne said Claiborne's burial makes no sense. His body returns to Columbia. A walnut casket is built for him, and then he is dumped in a mass grave with federal troops on the backside of Rose Hill Cemetery. They realized the error and moved him to St. John's. How did they lose track of his body between like measuring for the cast at the funeral? It's not like he walked off, or did he?
Well, there's that story, Perrin's Brigade at Gettysburg, right?
Yeah.
Where they're attacking on day one, and one of the guys up front, one of the artillery guys from the Confederates, gets hit by a shell, and he starts running away, and he starts yelling, "I'm a dead man. I'm dead. I'm dead." And he's running, bleeding.
Yeah.
And the colonel says to one of the stretcher bearers, "Go catch that dead man if you can catch him." So maybe that's what it was. So, but I think I think it was more not so much the burial part with the Claiborne thing.
Just ways laid out.
It was how he was laid out. He was laid out a very specific Masonic way.
Yeah.
And they left him for someone to bury him is what they did. Because they were getting they would go back to Nashville. They wanted to get the hell out of there.
It was the Union troops that did that to him
Kenny Chesney was playing that night. They had to go. No, but they had to get out of it. They were all getting the heck out of Dodge with that. So Schofield, exactly. they were pulling them all out. So they laid him out a certain way. How he did get thrown in that pit that's probably just the way it was.
Yeah, well, he was moved like 2 or 3 times as well. He's finally now in Helena, Arkansas, which is not where he wanted to be, but can't say anything when you're dead. Ryan said, just realized that both Southerners who commanded successful armies in war, Scott and Houston, had opposed secession and stayed loyal. Experience is king. That's very true.
Well, I think most normal, like really good military people understand going against what you're in is never, you're not going to win. I mean, you talk about the American Revolution. Sorry, Ryan, right? To talk about that. But again, the French coming in was a big part of that, right?
Yeah.
And so when there was with the American Civil War, when there was going to be no international intervention, it was a matter of time. We've talked about this a million times. If the second Atlanta fellow was over, because that precipitated the loss in the election for the Democrats. Yeah. And so once the election happened, why they continue the war is beyond me. At that point they should have said, we're done.
Well, it was just the propaganda thing. Like, you listen to what Jeff Davis is saying as he's escaping from Richmond and trying to head to fucking Mexico to keep the country going. He's saying, don't worry, we're okay. He's making these speeches as he's escaping. And like, there's like fire behind him, like, cause things are falling apart, right? Like, there was this thing where you had to keep it going to make the populace believe it. But you even had Longstreet still wanting to keep fighting. And Lee was like, no, we're done. This is
that not yet line and all that.
Yeah, this is over now.
E.P. Alexander was involved in that too. Put his pants on for a period to go fight a guerrilla war, but no, but I mean, I think at that point it was over with, because they were fighting against the Northern will at that point to fight, and once the election happened, you knew that Lincoln at that point wasn't going to walk away, and at that point it was more of means instead of will again, and they weren't going to beat him on means, and they weren't going to get intervention. So I think that was more of just they would not admit to what they were doing was wrong. At that point, we're not going to quit. We refuse to quit. We're going to fight until it be, and that's what they did.
Yeah, Leonard Davis, everything's fine. Allie B said Jeff Davis like, fuck you, but we can still do this.
I mean, he had no soldiers, he had no food, he had no weapons or thought. I mean, you had nobody coming to help. I mean, at that point, and the thing about Davis, he was such a micromanager with the military. He knew it. It was like he just oblivious.
And he put his friends in place over the ones who had the talent. I mean, you and I have talked recently about looking more closer at Beauregard, because Beauregard actually has some talent, but he and Davis just didn't get along. It's just like, him keeping Bragg in place as long as he had, or Hood, because they were friends. Meanwhile, Davis is not friends with Joseph E. Johnston. Finally puts him back in place at the end, for Columbia. And Joseph E. Johnston plays the same game that he played all along, running the clock down. He knew it was over. And I think he knew it was over in Atlanta, but Johnston was willing to play the run the clock game down to see if he could keep Sherman out. But when Hood was put in place, that was it. And Sherman knew he was going to get the fight that he needed to take Atlanta. Sherman knew that.
Yeah, I mean, all that stuff. I mean, the whole thing was just a race to the 1864 election is all it really was. It really was.
Yeah, once they got past 1862 and 1863, that's when it really became about that election, even that early on. And that's when Lincoln, I think, started to get really nervous.
Yeah, talk about how important Antietam was.
Yes.
So Antietam, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it just was. It just was.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. It's very, I don't know. Yeah. Like you say, it's about running the clock down at that point, and the Confederates just couldn't do it.
Yeah. The whole thing, again, like everything else in the world, not like nowadays it was then too, is how political it was as these states were coming in, it was the one slave, one free state back to back, because they're scared to death of Congress having a pro-slavery, or the South as a pro-anti-slavery movement on it. They try to keep it even. But it was just trying to keep everything together. It was like trying to build a sandcastle on the beach, and it's going to collapse, but you're building around it to try to keep it as long as you can, but inevitably what's going to happen. And that was from the whole beginning. And that was something that was never going to be anything different than that. That's why when you look back, I think that's why people are so fascinated with the Civil War, because from the Southern perspective, it was, some of these Southern people look at it like it's some sort of like romantic rebellion for their beliefs. But all it really was how many thousands upon thousands of people died when they really never had much of a chance anyway.
Yeah.
Because what they were fighting for ultimately was gonna die. I mean, my friend Roger, who I don't know where he's been lately, but he was a book he tried to enable me on, like basically as if the Confederates had won, what would have happened, right? If you ultimately you'd have at least three countries. It'd be like Europe here. You have the North, the South, the West, and whatever who knows what would have happened. But
Canada probably wouldn't, if the South had won, Canada probably would have definitely been annexed by the North.
I mean, you would have had the South would have opened up trade relations with England and France for cotton, right? Yep. They would have done that. You wonder what would have happened to the North as far as would they have traded with the South? How long would it have taken till they open up relations with them? It's interesting when you look at the big picture.
Like what would have happened. Allie B mentions that Davis didn't get along with most of those dudes, as Grant said in his memoirs. On several occasions during the war, he came to the relief of the Union Army by means of his superior military genius. Truth.
Yeah.
Jacob says Allie Biddle Davis serves as Secretary of War one time, and all of a sudden you're a military genius. I mean, he does go to West Point, which is a difference between him and Lincoln. Lincoln does not have that military background, despite serving in the Black Hawk War.
But I mean, if because you study Jomini or Shinzu, it makes you a military genius. I mean, for God's sakes, I studied Shakespeare in college doesn't make me a philosophical genius. I mean, it is. I mean, it's true. But I'm just saying that the military genius phrase gets thrown around a lot in that war.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like Nathan Bedford Forrest is a military genius.
Like Jacob thinks Braxton Bragg's a big military genius. And I don't really know if I agree with that. But I've heard Bragg referred to as military genius. So it's like, okay, wow, because you went to West Point, you're a friggin' genius.
Yeah, well, hey, just because you go to West Point does not mean you're a genius. And also just because you didn't go to West Point, some of the best did not go to West Point. Claiborne.
I actually work with a guy who went to West Point. Pretty smart guy. I don't know if he's a genius, but he's a smart guy. Doesn't say much. He's very quiet.
But there's this thing where it's like, oh, you went to West Point, so you must know how to function in the Army. It's like, that's not necessarily the case, because somebody like Claiborne, they have whatever it was without having gone to West Point.
Well, do you consider Pickett a military genius?
No.
Right?
No, I don't. And I don't even consider, and this is really putting myself out there, I don't know that Robert E. Lee was good, but genius at the military.
I mean, he was a commandant. He was no demerits. I think he probably was. I'm gonna have to pull the not so fast, my friend, on that one. I think he probably was. I think the bats and the belfry started to disappear on him as he got older. I think in his younger days, yes, but by the time the Civil War rolled around, and especially after Jackson was gone, he was very much lost. I think what Lee's problem was is he didn't adapt to the times.
No, he didn't.
What he believed in Mexico, he believed right up until Appomattox. I think that style, and that's why you had a lot of these other guys like the Longstreets pushing him. Gettysburg. I think some of the guys who really got it were guys like Forrest, unfortunately, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, Forrest too. And
who understood how to win a war like that. Whereas Lee was more of a tactician. He was a throwback, is what he
shone in the Mexican War, as Leonard brings up, that he was really good there. So yes, that's where I think his genius comes through. But he's in kind of his twilight in the Civil War. He just doesn't, I don't think he had what he had the Mexican War, but it was a different type of war, right? Like he wasn't able to, as you said, adapt. So that's a really good point. So yes, I think he was just my statement. Okay.
All right. He was an anachronism is what he was. He was a throwback. He was like how Winfield Scott was, but older at the very beginning, where he had a great track record, probably very smart.
Yeah.
He had a good understanding of tactic. but I think he didn't realize that the tactic was changing. The weaponry was changing, but the tactics weren't.
Yeah.
So when, and it wasn't just him, all these guys, I mean, you have Grant at Cold Harbor attack in the front. I mean, they were all still doing this Napoleonic style against these weapons that could shoot accurately at hundreds of yards, these mini ball, these rifles. And,
Minty Wilder.
Repeaters, right?
Yeah.
Custer, 6 Michigan, but I think that was the biggest flaw is he was like an old coach, like an old football coach who doesn't realize that the offense and the defense is it's not the game anymore. That's
Yeah. No, I retract my statement. He was a military genius. And yeah.
Okay, well, this retraction is brought to you by, I don't know, pick one.
Talking about it and having an open mind. Imagine that.
Yeah. All right. I mean, but look at was Custer a genius? Speaking of Custer, he graduated last in his class in 1861. So was he a genius?
Yeah. I think in some ways, yeah.
I mean, I think he had a good bearing on.
Yeah. I don't think where they graduate necessarily matters, because it could be just because they were being jackasses.
That's not true. Because if you went to Boston College, you were a genius. So it does matter where you graduated from. Just saying.
No, I meant the place in class.
I'm just kidding. For God's sakes. But no, I think this the street smart versus the book smart and all that stuff. But I think the reality is someone like a Patty O'Rourke, who graduated first in that class. He may have been more of a good tactician.
Yeah.
Another guy who was along with a guy like a Strong Vincent, who probably died way too early, had so much more capable of them militarily.
Yeah. But you have the ones that didn't go to West Point, like Pettigrew, who clearly was a rising star and cut down before you could really see where he was going to go, right? Like there's these ones that just have it, even though they haven't been to West Point. And yeah, you have someone like Sherman, who I think he was like, I don't know where he was in his class, but like he's a genius when it comes to the military.
I mean, I think genius is kind of thrown around. I mean, for God's sake, I mean, that just genius infers a certain intellectual level of IQ. I mean, like, who knows? I don't think. I mean, it's tough to say. I mean, for God's sakes. I mean, yeah, the point that Andrea makes about getting hit with that arrow. So didn't have a cup on that day, so it couldn't have been that smart, right?
Oh, Wayne says first in his class at fucking around and finding out. Yeah. Ryan, you get low marks in military drawing doesn't mean you can't run rings around deaf opponents.
Yeah. I mean, look, you look at there are all these guys are just of different levels of capabilities, right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the guys who went to West Point who became generals and officers and stuff like that, they would be the ones who ultimately would lead these men.
Yeah.
But I think I think the real genius is the ones who learned on the fly and understood the changing.
Were able to adapt, like the Grants, the Shermans, and all that. And I think Rosecrans had that until Chickamauga when he had his breakdown.
Yeah,
I think he had just had too much at that point, and he did not have that kind of like there. You can only take so much, and each of them is individuals. And to say Rosecrans was somehow inferior to Grant because he had like what happened at Chickamauga, I don't think that's really fair, because Rosecrans had done a lot by that point, and Chickamauga was just when he was like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you never know what's going on in the mind of these people either.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, you don't know what like seeing that one officer killed at Stones River had done to Rosecrans, how he just kind of was like shook it off and rode away. He's carrying the guy's buttons in his pocket for the rest of his life.
History is going to make us think differently. Jacob's right about Custer, about being a genius. He gets way too much credit for Gettysburg, by the way, and that's Dave McMurtry Gregg, run DMG, is the one who really was behind that. And you know who mentioned that was that lecture on Dr. Murray the other day?
Yeah, which is a really good lecture.
When you saw that picture of Howard you hadn't seen before, and
I know, I got excited.
You had to be hosed down.
Well, then what did I say to you? I messaged you and I was like, wow, he was short.
Yeah.
Because you could tell from that picture, like I looked at the guys standing around him and I realized that if Howard were standing on the ground, he would have been so much shorter than him. So Howard is up on the cannon. And then I looked at his legs and I'm like, oh my God, he's a short guy. So just kind of visualized him moving down on the ground. And
I tell you,
Howard would have stood about 5'6".
Yeah, he's probably little.
He was shorter than Grant.
The beard made him look bigger, I think.
Yeah.
And his hair, But I think I've got a book upstairs in my books plenty that actually lists the height of a lot of these guys. Like it had like Chamberlain like 5'9". I don't know why the heck somebody would write a book on their height, but somebody was interested.
I'm fascinated by that. Sherman was 5'10". Grant
he looks
5'7".
he looks like he'd be shorter.
No, he was Sherman. Tall. He was tall for that time. He was 5'10".
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like think Howard now. I'm guessing 5'6", and Sheridan was 5'4". Thomas was 6'2".
Yeah, Sheridan was the Thomas
was 6'2". I imagine him being built like a football player.
Yeah, he looks like one of those just the big ox of a guy, you know.
Yeah, who was quiet.
Yeah,
he didn't talk much at all.
You know, but I think you know, I think I think beaten to a dead horse. But I think you have to say Lee would be considered a military genius for that's someone who just didn't adapt, and I guess that's fine. Robert E. Lee's obviously.
I think, like I said, I think he shone in the Mexican War. That's really where he earns his reputation. But you know, twilight time is the Civil War, and he just, as you said, can't adapt. And I think losing Jackson did affect him.
Well, I don't know if
I think their friendship was more legend, has become more myth status.
Yeah, I think the friendship was a little overrated.
Yeah, but I think the two of them did work well together, and he was a little bit off kilter after Jackson died. And it turned out, I think he had like a heart attack at some point between Chancellorsville and Gettysburg, because he was not well at all, and he ends up dying of I think what would be considered congested heart failure. What is that, in 1872? Am I getting that
Which
right?
one, Robert E. Lee?
Yeah.
I think it was like 1869. It wasn't that long after the war.
I'm thinking Thomas, 1872.
It's like December 9th, 1869, I think he died. Something like that, right around there. I thought he died of a stroke, though.
That's why
this is why a lot of legend of Lee is a lot of it's bullshit, right? Like it sounds like I was reading something on Lee that he was literally sitting at his place at the Washington Lee University, right?
Yeah.
And he was talking, and he stopped in mid conversation, and just stopped talking.
Whoa.
And then he had a stroke, and then he died soon later.
Yeah.
So he could not have said that whole strike the tents line because he couldn't talk.
Who recorded that? Was that Mosby when he went to see him?
I have no idea who said that, to be honest. But the legend is he said strike the tent. He was talking about A.P. Hill, and he said strike the tents, and he died. But if he had a stroke, he couldn't have.
No, that's very true.
Talk.
Yeah.
So
I think there's a lot of legend that factors into even his death too. Like there's a lot of things that factor into Lee that have become part of Lee, the myth.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was December of 1870 or I think it was 70, but it was December, definitely December. But
Wayne, Jim, both say 1870. Jacobs is 1872.
It was definitely not 72. I'm pretty sure it was 70.
Yeah, Wayne says yes, as Zircoi's in his office, had a stroke, went home and pieced out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mosby went to see him, and so did wasn't Pickett somebody who went to see him?
I don't think it was Pickett.
Mosby did. Pickett saw him sometime after the war, I think.
Yeah. No, Pickett was not a fan of Lee. They
did not like Canada after the war.
They did not like each other after that war. It's Gettysburg, Five Forks after all that. Five Forks especially. That was the end of that. But you know,
Five Forks was we're gonna do
we're
going to do an episode on Five.
It wasn't December. It was October. That's right.
We're going to do an episode on Five Forks.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. But it's interesting because, you know, Lee at Washington Lee University, I mean, he put that school on the map. That's what he really did.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people would love to send their, you know, there were stories I read about people who, some of the students purposely got in trouble just to get a letter with Lee and get a letter from him, which makes a lot of sense.
Because he was so positive about how he got in trouble.
Well, there was that one story. There was a story when he fired Jubal Early, right?
Yeah.
Early, his letter, how he got fired, he framed. That was his prized possession, letter he got fired. He showed everybody. Another fun lover, by the way, Jubal Early, Larry.
Yeah.
But when Lee was at the school, you know, he was the headmaster, and there was some students tried to blow up a professor or pissed at him one time. You have that story?
No.
So what they did was there was firewood, and some teacher at the school gave someone a bad grade, and the student was going to try to pull a prank on him. It wasn't trying to hurt him. It wasn't an assassination attempt. He just wanted to pull a prank on this professor who had done him wrong. So he took some kind of black powder and he put it inside of a log and left it there. So when the professor lit the fire, it would pop, but they put too much powder in it. So it blew up half the damn building, but no one died. But what happened was they found out the kids who did it, and they had to go meet with Bobby Lee. It was these two students. So they come in there, and Lee basically said, do you know what you did? Yes, yes, yes. And then right before at the end, he said something along the lines of, oh, and by the way, you need this much powder to do that, not as much as you did. Yeah. so he kind of said, next time you do it, use this much. Don't use that much. This is how much you want to use. So he's like, yeah. So, but that's what they would do. I mean, I think that'd be cool. Imagine you come home and look, I got yelled at by Robert E. Lee. Oh yeah, keep that.
See, if I'd went to Howard University, which I don't know if I could have, I would have liked to have been yelled at by Howard, because he probably wouldn't have yelled at you. He probably wouldn't have don't worry. I just somehow had to get a mention in.
Oh, you'd be like that Hot for Teacher video, that Van Halen video. That's what you'd be.
No. As much as I joke around about it, I don't see Howard in that light.
No.
I don't.
A noun, a verb, and Howard is the average Mary sentence structure, but no, not at all. Okay.
Everybody has their Binkies weeks.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
Mine just happens to be the New Englander, so.
Yeah, there you go. So that's the way that is. So.
Yeah.
But no.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say that the Lee story is fascinating. It'd be a good podcast too, is to do a post-war Robert E. Lee podcast.
Yeah,
that'd be a good one too.
Let me write that down as an idea, because I need to start writing down these ideas.
Yeah.
Because I'm the one that updates the calendar for us.
Oh yeah. See, I don't do anything around here.
Yeah,
I'm just Darren.
Whatever.
You said me.
Pardon?
Nothing.
I did not call you just Darren ever. Yeah, I said it.
Robert E. Lee stare then for that one. Anyway, but no, it is interesting though. But that's a good topic though. But it will be yeah, we'll definitely do a post-war Robert E. Lee one. That'd be a good one.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah. Ryan says one of my favorite mini campaigns is Early's advance in Washington. Lou Wallace showing his medal, and Lincoln getting under fire and not giving a goddamn. Yeah, and that was like Lincoln was like standing up, and he like got shot at when he was standing up at the fort. You know that story?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Jacob said he would like to get yelled at for Robert E. Lee.
I don't know if he yelled though. I don't know if he was a yeller.
Paul said reading the man has some of the letters, for example, when he thanked his female cousin for the brief she made him hot stuff.
Oh God, yeah.
Jacob said that he's done a post episode or a post-war Lee episode.
Oh, I'm sure it's not breaking to ground anyway, but as far as there's a lot of those, but I'll have to check that one. I don't think I've ever checked that one out though.
Here's one for you, Darren. Howard asked, did Grant and Lee ever communicate post-war?
They did.
The train story.
The train story. So they were at the White House. So Lee was visiting Grant because he was trying to get a contract for a railroad. And he was negotiating some sort of contract with some railroad company. So he goes to the White House to meet old U.S. Grant. And they're sitting around at the White House, and Grant cracks a joke. He says, you know something, Mr. Lee, General Lee, I've called him General, probably said whatever. You and I have spent most of our careers destroying railroads. So it's ironic we're talking about building railroads today. And I guess Lee didn't even look up or smile.
Because Lee, right. I don't think had a sense of humor.
No, I don't think so.
Like I think he was one. There's a few of them that had senses of humor in the Civil War. Grant was definitely one of them, and so was Sherman. Same with Howard, and I think Longstreet had a bit of a sense of humor on him too. But Lee, no. Same with Hancock. There was no. Wayne says, I get the impression that Lee was one to give the long, annoying lecture instead of a tirade, what with being a gentleman and all. And he said, actually, I don't think he disciplined anybody worth a damn. His students ransacked the Freedmen's Bureau and stole the keys to the building. Pretty sure Lee did nothing. Wonder what Howard did about that.
I don't know.
That was Howard's
I'm going to guess he probably ran.
Thanks, fucker.
He was a first track coach, you know, at Howard University. That's a fact.
Yeah, he probably was, because he knew how to run. He was born to run.
He invented the Washington Marathon.
And by the way, you missed my comment on Lampoon the other day.
Oh, I did? What did you say?
I said that, like, Al had a post about what would Civil War generals do with their stimulus money, and I said Howard would buy new running shoes.
Oh, I guess I did miss it.
Yep, you did. You don't pay attention.
Wow, look at you, like Don Rickles here. Look at you. Look at you bringing the ha-has. Wow.
Ryan said Lee's not a yeller. He's a very I'm disappointed in you type. Yeah, like when Jeb comes in late for Gettysburg, it's not, I'm not angry, Jeb. I'm just disappointed. That's so much worse when you hear that someone's disappointed.
You know, a lot of people say that story never happened, Mary.
I know.
A lot of people. It's all made up.
Isn't Wittenberg one of them?
That's Wittenberg's big hot button right there. Mention that to Wittenberg. He will tell you off on Facebook if you try to push him on that one. But he will. But well, listen. But the story
Jeb was late and got yelled at and got the lecture from Lee. First Corps broke first. Howard was better than Hancock. That's how I'm going to fight in Gettysburg.
Okay, well, I'm going to take. You're going to die on that hill. No doubt about it.
I'm not even drinking today.
They're under consultuar.
Yep. It's my best friend for the next 22 days.
Stupid idea that was. But,
hey, we don't have to.
I know.
You break, I break.
Yeah, let's see who breaks first. I'll be the first. You'll be the 11th.
First Corps broke first. 5 minutes.
That's exactly what's going to happen, probably.
If you send me a picture in the next 22 days holding a beer, you're going to get one from me in about 30 seconds.
No, it's okay. Tend to do this on what? Yeah,
I'm like you. I'm stubborn and I'll stick with it.
No, do it. Why not? But I think what's good though, like when we go on to talk about Sumter, right?
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to it's a Sumter, by the way. So, and the flags, like both. But but when this podcast is going to be a good set up for that one because it's going to it makes a lot more sense. I think I don't understand why you keep holding that.
This is Sherman, the Triceratops.
Oh.
Because you always have a different flag. I meant to bring my owls down for this one, but I decided to have stuffed toys because I don't have flags. But I have a collection of plush animals. Howard's one of them.
That's normal. Okay. But no, okay. No, but I think it's a good study to do this. I think a lot more people need to study the beginning of the whole conflict and to get to it, you know, because I'll tell you right now, they certainly don't teach that in school. They don't teach any of that.
No,
you know, they're not going to teach any of that stuff. And it's good to know because this way, when you're talking about, when you're talking to people about the causes of the American Civil War, and there are going to be people out there who don't feel that slavery was the big issue. Yeah, it's always the underlying, and you know they'll go back to the 28 Tariff Act. They'll talk about the Missouri Compromise. They'll talk about all the stuff, Nebraska, Kansas. But the slavery thing is always the overhanging constant with all of them, right? Yeah, and that's that's the way it was. And but I think it's fascinating though.
I do too. I'm like, I really, you know, don't get why people don't study it more. And I do agree with you. I'm glad we studied it because it's not something that gets looked at that in depth. Yes, you were right. Yep, as usual.
Yeah, it's okay.
You can wear that for the next 5 minutes, fucker. Anyway, so it's like studying the lesser known battles of the Civil War. You begin to realize how much more they factor into the bigger picture, like the Stones Rivers, like Ball's Bluff and all that. Like you really start to see that. So it's important to look at these kind of something that is seen as a footnote in history. When you look at it more, you understand the bigger picture better. Just like we said about John Wilkes Booth, he doesn't just walk into Ford's Theater on April 14th, 1865 and shoot Lincoln. There's a whole backstory there that factors into the understanding of not just the Civil War, but Abraham Lincoln as well and what happened.
No, these guys had a whole setup going back to, they knew when this thing was going to go down. They were prepared for it. They knew it was happening. They were just waiting for that one spark, and that's what it was. And the Sumter thing gave it put, like I said, it put the ball in the Confederates' court, what would be the Confederates. But what it would ultimately end up doing was it would basically force them to be the one who pulled the trigger. And that was the big thing. That was the whole thing.
Yeah, exactly. I just got to reply to something. Andrea Leonard said Jurassic Uncle Blingy. And then Andrea said, I hope you don't think I think you're fat, Mary. I never trust unisex sizes, so I go big. No, Andrea, it's fine. I love big hoodies. This is perfect.
Oh, okay. So I was going with this one. I was still thinking with the dinosaur,
No, it's actually very comfortable. I love it. No, it's perfect. The stuffed animal looks like Burnside.
Burnside, okay. But it's interesting though, because when you visit these places and you see, I thought it was funny. I sent you that picture that inside the hall where they seceded. Yeah, there's a picture of Sherman.
I know,
which is crazy. So random. It's just random. Definitely got a kick out of that. It's like you're walking and you're seeing John C. Calhoun. You're seeing Pickens.
And then you see Uncle Blingy.
Then you see that Uncle Blingy. I sat on my keys look. That he always seems to have.
Maybe it was because of his girlfriend.
Well, maybe that's. Oh, yeah. Now we're talking.
Yeah. See, that's again. It goes back to the girlfriend.
Must be a Blingy After Dark picture there somewhere. Then
he's going to be on RebTube.
BAD, Blingy After Dark.
That's a RebTube channel.
On RedTube. God, another.
No, it's RebTube.
I know. I'll go back to a point.
Jim says, shout out for the Asia Booth memoir. What a fantastic read. Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah. Jimmy, I saw on your Facebook that you are reading that. I'm glad you like it. That's a good book. That's just
really, really good.
It's just a fun and easy read too. You could read the whole thing in a day. It's probably 100 pages, but it's just a neat insight into his history. So we did a podcast on him last week. That book was obviously the primary source that we both use, and then Dr. Lisa, not Dr. Lisa, God, Lisa, not Dr. Lisa Sam, Lisa Sam. I think of Jen Murray. Lisa Samuel being on really helped fill in the gaps too, because that's kind of her thing.
Yep. No, it was really good. It kind of gives us that kind of springboard too to do more episodes about the boost and about the assassination. See you, Andrea. I hope the kids feel better.
Yeah, take care, Andrea. I hope you guys are doing well. It's a tough situation going there, and happy mediocre bowl weekend. Go Chiefs.
Okay, Allie B said that Sherman always had that resting bitch face.
I've seen pictures of him smiling recently.
Yeah, online. That's not creepy at all.
Now the Calhoun smiling one's the worst.
You're still supposed to make me a picture of Barlow with a beard too, fucker.
Oh, I can do that. I'll do that.
Yeah. Remember when you did Howard without the beard?
That took a while to do that one too. He's definitely needs a beard.
I'm glad he's with a beard. You know who else is Jeb Stewart and John Reynolds.
I don't think. Oh, okay. The Jeb Stewart picture though, he doesn't look too bad because he looks so young, but he doesn't look. I mean, it's Jeb Stewart when you see it.
Yeah. Reynolds, you don't.
Reynolds looks like, I don't know what that picture is. It looks like someone dressed up in a girl's costume, like a Halloween costume.
Claiborne looks like a 12-year-old without the goatee as well.
But that picture of Reynolds though, holy crap, that one,
Yeah. No Calhoun smiling anymore. Jacob would like us do an episode on Powell Payne.
Yeah, we talked about that.
We are going to do some episodes on the different conspirators. We'll probably, I think the way to do it is to cover a few per episode, but yeah, we definitely will be, because
we could easily do an episode on all of them. Oh, yeah. I mean the primary four. We're not going to. We're not going to do one on Sam Arnold for God's sakes. But like
I'm biased. Mary Surratt deserves one all on her own.
Surratt, Harold, and Powell.
Because do you mean Payne?
Oh yeah, exactly. Payne.
Going by Payne now.
The Booth thing. I mean, the Booth thing is. I don't want to say the Booth thing is kind of played. I think everyone gets the Booth thing, but the retreat will be a good one for Booth. But the background and we kind of did that last week anyway. But the Powell story is a fascinating story.
It is, yeah.
Because his story doesn't end when he dies. That's a cool thing about Powell. It goes on,
That's creepy about that guy. Like the guy reburies his body and takes his fucking head. It's like, what the hell?
Who knows what the hell that's all about?
Yeah. Jacob hashtag free Mary Surratt. Yeah.
The Mary Surratt one is the interesting one though, because that's the one. look, some of our friends like Dr. Kate, that she'll die on the hill that Mary knew everything, which I don't agree with that. But she does a lot of research, so who knows? But it's her opinion. But
we do have a couple lawyers in our breakfast club too. Ryan and Leonard. It'll be interesting to hear their takes on it if they read Assassin's Accomplice.
Well, you really need to read, Assassin's Accomplice. But if you really want to read the Surratt stuff, you got to read that book, that the Judicial Murder of Mary Surratt. Right? Yeah. It is a brutal, tough read. It's very legalese. It makes your head hurt, but it really explains that it's just a backwards. I mean, it would the epitome of a kangaroo court is what that was. But Assassin's Accomplice is just a really good book.
I want to watch. I've been wanting to watch The Conspirator again.
Yeah, it's a good movie too, and there's no doubt about that. But it's definitely pretty cool. But but I think when we move on from secession, we'll talk about the next step with that, and we'll get into that around April. So
we have our episodes in April. We have our episodes planned out now, I think, through May the 6th.
Yeah, so I was going to say, we always do our "What did you learn?" So we'll do that for you, right? So
what did I learn from this? I think, more of what was going on in Charleston, and it really made me realize the tension that was just must have been happening with, going to get the weapons and then being told no, you can't have them, and just how Anderson gave this big fuck you by heading out to Sumter, which I knew he had headed out to Sumter. But to just more of how much, going back to 1820 to the Missouri Compromise, everything factors into this, and the level of violence that is happening in the period 1850 to 1859, especially Bleeding Kansas. Like, there's violence happening out there. There's violence happening in Congress. And I don't think that gets talked about as much as it should, that there's a lot of violence before the Civil War. So that was my other takeaway as well.
Yeah. And the interesting is how much impact a guy like John C. Calhoun had, right? Obviously a South Carolina boy. He legitimately had told people that if you don't like it, you take your ball, go home. You can do it, and he was so well thought of in that state. And so they felt that they could just do it. They talk about the 12th Amendment. There's all kinds of stuff they bring up. But I mean, but the reality is how much impact he had. And he's a guy, when you talk about these national villains, he doesn't come up enough. If you really, because you want to talk about it, he's the one who is the instigator in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
But people, when you mention maybe three people when you think of the American Civil War and seceding from the Union, no one mentions Calhoun. You can mention Davis, you can mention Lee, and you can mention Stonewall Jackson.
Yep. Also, who else was in Charleston at the time is States Rights Gist dad.
States Rights Gist, yeah. I mean, to think about it. And it goes to show, I mean, how long all the stuff they were thinking about with all this stuff. John C. Calhoun still has his picture in the Capitol. I saw those pictures. Yeah. Unfortunately.
I just thought of another episode we could do would be Jeff Davis's cabinet. Everybody talks about Abraham Lincoln's cabinet. Who's on Jeff Davis's cabinet, and how do they factor into secession and the Civil War and all that?
That sounds like a good rail splitter podcast.
No,
you and old Jeremy could talk about that one.
Fine, never mind.
You guys are fun. I'm just kidding.
I just was thinking.
Yeah, definitely. But I think we can probably get ready to sign off here. I think, right? It's almost the witching hour. We always go 2.5 hours here. So.
Yep.
So coming attractions for us. So we are going to be doing the Valentine's Day Spectacular.
Yep, episode 26, which is the 6-month mark for us.
Yeah, I'll be half a year right off the bat. So we're going to talk about Valentine's Day and the American Civil War, and then we're going to be doing this dating profiles.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Which is probably going to sound just as much train wrecky as I think it's going to sound. But it'll be fun to do. We can definitely talk about that. So anyways, yeah. So. As far as the Super Bowl goes tomorrow, I think I'm rooting for a big Kansas victory. Kansas City. I don't like Kansas City Chiefs. I just don't need you. You will not believe the amount of Tom Brady ball washing that is going on up here with this, and I just can't deal with it anymore. I just can't. And I love Tom Brady. I used to anyway. I got my 6 titles right there, right?
Yeah.
But you know what? I'm sick of hearing it. I'm just sick. It's funny how he went from being an evil guy to being this wonderful person again just because he's playing for Tampa now. I don't get it, but anyway, I want him to lose. I want him to lose badly, but that's my take on that. I'm going to give you a prediction too. I'm going to say it's going to be Kansas City 34, Tampa Bay 24. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I think you're about right. 10 point
something
game.
like that. It'd be about a 10-point game.
I think so.
But that's how that's going to be. So
Wayne said, I am quite certain this is the fastest 2 hours of my entire week. I guess that's a good thing. It goes by quickly for us too.
Yeah,
it feels like we just started,
Yeah, we try to keep it for 2 hours. Trying to go with that. So
we could go all day with this. Hey, Chris. Chris is Tom,
what's up,
Tom
Chris?
Brady forever.
Hey, when he comes back, when he retires, I'll be back on the good side. See, I don't see how any Patriot fan can root for the Bucks. I just don't see it. I don't see it. This is a guy who literally gave you the finger as he walked out the door, and now he's showing you how much fun he's having away from you. And now we're supposed to root for him to have more fun? Yeah. No siree, Bob. Burnside.
Bring it back to the Civil War.
Siree, Bob. Anyway, whoever wins, it doesn't matter. My life's not going to change either way. So as long as Boston College again beats BU again tonight in hockey, I will be happy. So
I'm going to put my jersey on because you know what, Weeks? I wore my jersey last night for Boston College, and the Bruins and Boston College won.
That's good.
You got to give me some credit because you've been giving me shit for how badly the Patriots did because I kept wearing the Edelman jersey.
I know. Bill didn't want. Oh, Bill, that's not really true. He wanted out. He wanted gone. He wanted out just as much as Bill wanted him gone. But he could have come back if he wanted to, and he priced himself out. He wanted to get the hell out of Dodge. He wants to win without Belichick, which I get. But he ain't gonna win. He's gonna lose.
Ryan said, if you're tired of the superb owl stuff, watch Ireland crush Wales in the rugby game tomorrow.
I'll watch that. That sounds like a good time.
Actually, my parents watch rugby, but they hate football. It's really weird. But my dad's British. I wonder if that has something to do with it.
I don't know. I think people like Ryan, people over there in Europe, look at football as kind of a watered down, soft version of rugby.
They do.
I get.
They do.
I get it. I mean,
my dad says that football's barbaric, but then as he's saying that, he's watching a fucking rugby game.
I think today's NBA is a watered down version of the real NBA. So I can only imagine what Ryan thinks of football, which I totally get.
And David said, take care, guys. Yeah, everybody take care. Thank you for spending
a couple hours. Just we're gonna get a lot of snow here in the northeast. I think it's snowing everywhere still now. It won't stop snowing. So stay safe. Enjoy your game tomorrow. Allie, I guess we'll see. Yeah. May the better team win. I hope it's fun. Whatever. I just hope I have power. Maybe lose my power tomorrow.
You keep always telling me like if I go dark, it's because I lost power. Like you haven't.
Because I lose power all the time.
You've not lost power since I met you.
We not had a big storm yet. This is gonna be the big one. We were supposed to have it last weekend. House blew down in the neighborhood with a storm, the wind last week.
Well, yeah, you told me.
We didn't lose power, but this one be a bad one. So we shall see. But we'll see what happens. But in any case, so everybody enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah. Just a reminder, a week from Wednesday, we have our next roundtable too on the 17th.
So I'll jump on that. So enjoy the rest of your day. Have a safe weekend. And definitely, if you haven't checked out the podcast, please do. We had a lot of fun making that one. So hopefully
available on Google Podcasts, Podbean, iTunes. If you just Google Civil War Breakfast Club podcast, will come out. It's also, we have all the episodes on our website as well. Too.
Definitely. So
I've already got the coming attractions updated on the website.
You did a good job with it, but good stuff is coming down the pike. So again, thanks for everybody listening. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and we always have a lot of fun doing this as well. So Mary, until next time, until our next sparkling water session
for the next 3
weeks. So
one down, 3 to go.
So everybody have a good weekend. Enjoy the rest of your day, and peace out.
Yeah.
And everyone have a great, safe week until
stay
we shall
awesome,
see
everybody.
Again.
You guys are great.
All right. Well, as they say, we will see you on the other side.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Peace out. All right.